Chapter 8. Although they were about to part ways, when Long Houchin saw the small white cauldron, he couldn't help but be attracted to it. "Dad, what is this?" Long Xingwu said. "This is the saint's spiritual stove, a gift that Dad prepared for you." There are many types of spiritual stoves, each with its own characteristics. Spiritual stoves are also divided into different grades. But the more powerful the spiritual stove, the greater the price to be paid when using it. This saint's spiritual stove is ranked 68th among the 74 known spiritual stoves, but its rarity is comparable to the top 10 spiritual stoves. The book I gave you has detailed records of the saint's spiritual stove's functions. Simply put, this saint's spiritual stove does not have any offensive or defensive abilities, nor is it able to substantially increase your spiritual power. However, it can evolve at least 3 times. It is comparable to the top 20 spiritual stoves. But for us, Knight, it has an enormous effect. When using the saint's spiritual stove, it can attract the enemy's attention, causing the enemy to only attack you and not your companions. Unless you are killed or you voluntarily interrupt the saint's spiritual stove, it can only target you. Perhaps you are still unable to understand the mysteries of this, but in the future, you will definitely understand how enormous its effect is. At the same time, the greatest advantage of the saint's spiritual stove is that it is the rarest non-attribute spiritual stove. Not only will it not burden your body in the process of using it, but it also consumes relatively little spiritual power. Moreover, it will not affect your absorption of other spiritual stoves in the future. Therefore, Dad chose it as your first spiritual stove. I hope you will like this gift. As for what other abilities it can evolve into, Dad does not know. You can only rely on yourself to explore. Also, you must remember that spiritual stoves are not omnipotent. It is not that the more powerful the spiritual stove, the more suitable it is for you. One had to pay a huge price to use one of the top 10 spiritual stoves. Some of the prices are even difficult for us to bear. The more spiritual stoves, the better. You must make a detailed judgment before deciding whether or not to fuse with a new spiritual stove. Long Xingwu's voice was very strict. Every word he said was the conclusion of many years of experience. "Dad, how many spiritual stoves can each person fuse with?" Long Houchin asked. Long Xingwu shook his head and said, "I don't know." In theory, there was no limit to the number. However, it was easy for spiritual stoves to clash with each other. If such a situation were to occur, then the fusion user would most likely die. There were at most 5 known spiritual stoves. I fused 3. However, it did not mean that the more spiritual stoves he fused, the better it would be. Spirit stoves required constant effort to evolve. A spirit stove that had evolved a few times was even more powerful than a few spirit stoves that had not evolved yet. Alright, the most important thing is that Dad has told you. Houchin, don't forget what your mother said. No matter what, your safety is the most important. While speaking, Long Xingwu's left hand pointed forward and patted Long Houchin's chest. Immediately, his body was enveloped by a layer of golden light, making him unable to move. Long Xingwu's left hand flashed, and he had already pointed 4 times at Long Houchin's chest. 4 specks of white light appeared there. Long Houchin only felt as if his body had been pierced through. The spiritual energy within his body was instantly drawn and revolved around the place his father had pointed at. Pulling up Long Houchin's right hand, a speck of golden light carefully cut his fingertip and squeezed out a drop of blood. The bright red blood floated up under the support of Long Xingwu's spiritual energy and lightly fell into the saint's spiritual stove. Immediately, the small white cauldron that was originally releasing a gentle light blossomed with a dazzling radiance. A streak of white light was quickly released from it and fell on Long Houchin's chest. The warm feeling stimulated Long Houchin's entire body, and all the pores on his body opened up in a flash. The spiritual energy that was revolving within his body also spread out in a flash, as if an intruder wanted to enter his body. The white light flickered, and the small white cauldron slowly flew towards Long Houchin's chest under the guidance of this white light. Bit by bit, it seeped into his body. The originally warm feeling instantly turned into a scorching heat, as if a soldering iron had been branded on his chest. Long Houchin couldn't help but let out a blood-curdling scream. Bai, who had just rushed into the wooden house, was so frightened that she ran out again. Fortunately, this scorching heat didn't last too long. After a few breaths, the small white cauldron had already disappeared into his body. A faint white light rippled within Long Houchin's body, causing a layer of lustrous luster to gradually appear on the surface of his skin. Long Houchin only felt countless blazing energy spreading from his chest, spreading to every corner of his body, including his brain. Countless profound truths accompanied this blazing energy as it flowed into his brain. All of his senses were instantly sealed off. Long Houchin stiffened on top of the mountain peak, his body shining with a faintly discernible white light. Especially on his chest, accompanied by the flickering light, the imprint of the small spiritual stove continuously appeared. This was the process of the saint's spiritual stove and Long Houchin's fusion. With his blood as the guide and spiritual energy as the medium, the mystical stove that was condensed from the essence of heaven and earth completely became a part of his body. In order to fuse with this spiritual stove, the most basic requirement was a starting point of a third-grade profession of 200 spiritual energy points. The current Long Houchin had clearly long since surpassed this requirement. Long Xingwu stood there, silently looking at his son. His eyes gradually revealed a bit of disappointment and frustration. Bai silently walked to Long Xingwu's side, holding his big hand, her tears once again flowing uncontrollably. Are you really not going to take Qinshin with you? I don't feel at ease with him. Ever since he was a child, he has never left my side. Long Xingwu embraced his wife. Don't worry, the arrangements I've made for him are the most secure. If he doesn't leave our side, he will never be able to grow into a true man. The battle between us and the demons is becoming more and more difficult. Our son possesses such outstanding talent. In the future, he will certainly become a mainstay of the Temple League. If you really love him, then let him spread his wings. Let him soar in the sky. That agreement, can you not go? Bai said with tears in her eyes. She knew very well that this was one of the real reasons why her husband had left their son. Long Xingwu's eyes revealed a resolute look. The battle between me and Anan is unavoidable. I have waited for this day for far too long. If I can let him fall, it will be a blessing for mankind. Don't worry for you and our son. I will definitely do my best to come back alive. The sky was clear, and the mountain breeze blew, bringing a bit of dryness and freshness to the Odin Mountains. Long Houchin slowly opened his eyes. When he saw the seemingly deserted 3 small wooden houses in front of him, no matter how warm his body was, at this moment, his heart sank into an icy coldness. Dad, Mom! Long Houchin shouted loudly, rushing into the central wooden house, which was the room where his parents lived. The simple furnishings were still the same, but there was not a trace of them. A suffocating sense of loss and longing instantly filled Long Houchin's heart. With a thud, he knelt on the ground, tears flowed out like spring water. Even though he had just separated from them, at this moment, he felt as if he was already surrounded by loneliness. Dad, even if you take me with you, I will not slack off. Choking, Long Houchin bent over in pain, his hands digging fiercely into the ground, unable to control his emotions for a long time. After the time it took to eat a meal, Long Houchin crawled up from the ground. He was actually very strong, but in his heart, the most important thing was still his mood. Without any warning, his parents' sudden departure was really hard for him to accept. Standing up, Long Houchin's eyes were a little dazed. Everything that had happened in the past 2 years, his father's strictness, his mother's gentleness, kept appearing in his mind. Why are the days of happiness and joy always so short? Tears almost fell again. At this moment, Long Houchin saw 2 letters on the wooden table in front of him. In 2 or 3 steps, he rushed forward and grabbed the letters. On the covers of the 2 letters were written to Long Houchin and to Nailan Shu. Obviously, one letter was for him, and the other was for the Haoyue branch palace master. After Long Haochen calmed down a little, he slowly opened the letter his parents left for him. Long Haochen, when you see this letter, your mother and I will already be gone. We are not willing to face the pain of parting. Parting is only temporary. You have already grown up. You are a man. You must be strong. In the future, the only thing you can rely on is your own strength. After you see this letter, go directly to Haoyue City and learn the various skills of the Guardian Knight at the Haoyue Branch Palace. There is an excellent instructor there. Remember, if it is not necessary, do not easily expose the fact that you are also a disciplinary knight. In my letter to Nailan Shu, I will also remind him of this. Nailan Shu is a trustworthy person. You can listen to his arrangements. At the same time, you must learn all the Guardian Knight skills under the 4th rank and be proficient in using them. Only then can you go to the Holy Mountain to obtain a mount that belongs to you. The Holy Mountain is spiritual. If you cannot stimulate your own innate talent and future ability, you will not be able to obtain a suitable mount companion. At the same time, learning the Guardian Knight skills will greatly increase your ability to survive. Remember, the spiritual stove must be constantly cultivated. After obtaining the spiritual stove, it will become a medium for you to cultivate your internal spiritual power, thereby increasing your cultivation. You have already fused with the Saint's spiritual stove. Your internal spiritual power may be reduced because of the fusion, but don't worry. This is the process of your internal spiritual power fusing with the spiritual stove. At least half a month, at most a month, you will be able to recover. The Saint's spiritual stove is especially suitable for the Guardian Knight. Later, you must experience it. Long Haochen, father and mother are also reluctant to part with you. However, father hopes that the next time we meet, you will already have the ability to take charge. If mother and I haven't come to find you, that means we have important matters that we can't get away from. Unless your cultivation can reach the 7th rank of the Temple Knight and pass the test and competition to obtain the Mithril Foundation battle armor, don't come to find us. The letter ended here. Long Haochen sluggishly looked at the letter. The reluctance in his heart had already reached the peak. Long Haochen didn't immediately leave Mount Odin. He stayed here for another 3 days, until there was no longer the smell of his parents in the wooden house. Only then did he reluctantly pack up his luggage and go down the mountain. When he passed by Odin Town, he saw that the town was undergoing reconstruction work, and there were at least 2,000 Temple League elite soldiers stationed near Odin Town. When he arrived at Haoyue City, it was already noon, and Haoyue City didn't seem to have changed much. The moment he stepped into the city gate, Long Haochen secretly vowed that he must do his best to reach the 7th rank of the night as soon as possible. Haoyue City didn't seem to be tense because of the attack of the demons. Long Haochen once again arrived at the Knights Templar's Haoyue Branch Palace, according to his memory. Sorry to trouble you. I would like to see Hall Master Naren. Long Haochen handed over his knight's perspective badge. The 2 guards at the door had already been replaced. Although they didn't know him, seeing that he was obviously only a teenager but had a knight's perspective badge, they didn't dare to neglect and hurriedly went in to report. After a while, accompanied by a faint fragrance, a figure had already rushed out of the Haoyue Branch Palace. Brother Haochen, you're finally here. The person who rushed out of the Branch Palace was Lin Xian. She was still dressed like before, soft armor, ponytail, full of heroic spirit. A 1.5 years did not leave any traces on her body, but she looked more spirited. Obviously, her cultivation had made a lot of progress. Sister Xian. Seeing her, Long Haochen suddenly felt like he had seen his family, and the emotions that had been suppressed for a few days almost burst out again. Under the stunned gaze of the 2 guards, he directly threw himself into Lin Xian's arms. Lin Xian gave him a big hug. Feeling the sadness in Long Haochen's mood, she hurriedly asked, "Haochen, what's wrong? What happened?" Long Haochen choked and said, "Father and mother are all gone. I'm the only one left." Lin Xian was shocked. "You mean the attack of the demons?" Long Haochen immediately heard that she had misunderstood and hurriedly explained, "No, father and mother went somewhere else and asked me to stay and join the Haoyue Branch Palace to continue cultivating." Lin Xen patted her towering chest. You scared me. So it's just that they went on a long trip. What's wrong? I can't wait to be with my parents. From now on, the Haoyue Branch Palace is your home. If anyone dares to bully you, just say my name. Come, let's go in first. As she said that, Lin Xin pulled Long Haochen's hand and strode into the Haoyue Branch Palace. The two guards at the door looked at each other, revealing a shocked expression. Who is this young man? Why is our Rose Knight so intimate with him? Lower your voice. You dare to ask about Miss Xener's gossip? If you could be as handsome as that young man, maybe Miss Xine will also look at you differently. Lin Xin pulled Long Haochen into the Haoyue Branch Palace. Everything was the same, but when Long Haochen once again saw the sixth throne of God placed in the middle of the hall, the feeling was completely different. Pride instantly diluted the sadness. He immediately found the second throne on the left, the throne of God that symbolized doomsday and slaughter. That is Father's glory. One day, I will become the owner of one of the six throne of God. Long Haochen's eyes revealed a somewhat fiery look. Lin Xin felt his footsteps slow down, fortunately stopped and said, Brother, it's only been a little more than a year, and you've grown so much taller. In another 2 years, I'm afraid you'll surpass Sister. And even more handsome. This is really amazing. When you grow up, I don't know how many girls will be dazzled by you. Lin Xin was tall. Even though Long Haochen had grown a lot taller, he was still shorter than her by half a head. However, at this moment, when she looked at Long Haochen, she couldn't help but secretly exclaim. Even her heartbeat showed signs of speeding up. Long Haochen, who was almost 12 years old, was different from a year and a half ago. His originally beautiful and somewhat delicate little face now had a few more strong lines, turning his beauty into handsomeness. His well-proportioned, slender figure, coupled with his black shoulder-length hair, was almost perfect without any flaws. Lin Xin, what's wrong with you? He's your brother, younger than you by 8 years. Don't tell me you want to be an old cow eating young grass. She scolded herself in her heart. Only then did her emotions calm down. But towards Long Haochen, she became even more fond of him. She was the youngest child in the family, and had always longed for a younger brother. Although she didn't spend much time with Long Haochen, in Lin Xin's heart, she was very close to this younger brother. Hey, little brother, I remember your eyes weren't this color before. It should be dark blue. How did it become light gold? Long Haochen came back to his senses, scratched his head, and said, After Dad helped me with the divine awakening, it became like this. Lin Xin was stunned for a moment. The divine awakening will cause the eyes to change color? How come I've never heard of it? You've already undergone the divine awakening. Doesn't that mean your spiritual energy has already broken through 200? Quickly tell Sister, how much spiritual energy do you have? Long Haochen shook his head and said, Sister, I don't want to lie to you. Dad won't let me say. Suddenly, Lin Xin seemed to have thought of something, one hand covering her mouth, and murmured in a low voice, Heavens! A rank 3 knight, less than 12 years old. Let's go. I'll take you to see Uncle Nalen. He will definitely be scared by you. What will scare me? A somewhat playful voice sounded. Long Haochen and Lin Xin looked back and saw Nalen Shu walking down the stairs. Seeing Long Haochen, Nalen Shu was also taken aback, but his eyes became eager in an instant. He quickly came in front of Long Haochen, looked him up and down, and couldn't restrain his emotions and asked, That day, was it your teacher? Long Haochen was slightly taken aback, but soon understood what he was asking and nodded proudly. Nalen Shu took a deep breath, his eyes showing a look of burning worship. I knew it. Lin Xin asked doubtfully. Uncle Nalen, what kind of riddle are you playing? Nalen Shu's face sank and said, Why haven't you gone to cultivate yet? You're already a rank 7 knight. Whether you can break through to Great Knight before the Monster Hunters trials is the key to whether you can become a member of the Monster Hunters. You still haven't gone to cultivate. Leave Long Haochen to me. Lin Xin stuck out her tongue and said to Long Haochen, Brother, I'm going to cultivate first. Tonight Sister will welcome you, treat you to a big meal. Hee hee. As she spoke, she turned and ran away. Nayland Shu said somewhat helplessly and dotingly. This child, already almost 20 years old, but still so crazy. Children from ordinary families at this age are about to get married. Withdrawing his gaze, Nayland Shu looked at Long Haochen, nodded to him, and said, "Haochen, come with me." Long Haochen followed him again to the second floor where Nayland Shu worked. After Nayland Shu closed the door, he could no longer suppress his excitement. The throne of God of doomsday and slaughter. Long Haochen, do you know, originally the demons were going to make a big move this time. But because of your teacher's action, the 5 legions of the demons that sneaked into the Alliance's territory were scared off. Where's your teacher? Can you let me see Lord Xingyu? Long Haochen shook his head and said, Palace Lord Nayland, he's gone. Here. As he spoke, he took out the letter left by his father and handed it to Nayland Shu. Nayland Shu couldn't wait to open the letter and read it, and a touch of surprise quickly appeared on his face. After reading the contents of the letter several times, he looked at Long Haochen with some disbelief. You are Lord Xingyu's son. But why did Lord Xingyu let you follow me to learn the Guardian Knight skills? Why not Retribution Knight? Lord Xingyu is our Knight Alliance's #1 Retribution Knight. Long Haochen said, Palace Lord Nayland, Father didn't let me say more. If he didn't tell you in the letter, then I can't say it either. Nayland Shu took a deep breath and carefully put the letter away. After a moment of hesitation, he said, Good. No matter what the reason is, I can't disobey Lord Xingyu's orders. From now on, you are truly a member of the Haoyue branch. I will do everything I can to train you. In the letter, Lord Xingyu told me to let you participate in the Monster Hunter selection 2 years later. And I will listen to your arrangements. Long Haochen straightened his back and gave Nayland Shu a standard knight salute. Nayland Shu patted his shoulder and said, In the future, you can also call me Uncle Nayland, like Xionaire. To be honest, letting me teach you the knight skills, my heart is really a bit perturbed. However, I believe, in the near future, you will certainly become the greatest glory of our Haoyue branch. Let's go. I will first take you around our branch and arrange a place for you to live. Thank you, Uncle Nayland. The Haoyue branch occupied an enormous area, but it wasn't just what Long Haochen saw. Behind the main hall, there was still a large area. It was mainly divided into 3 parts for the knight to rest, the Knight Square for cultivation, and the Knight Hall for imparting knowledge and skills. With Haoyue City as the center, every 2 or 3 years the nearby villages and towns would send a group of knight attendants to the Haoyue branch for assessment. Only those who could pass the prospective knight assessment could stay in the Haoyue branch to study and cultivate. If they could break through to the rank 3 knight within 5 years, then they would become a real member of the Haoyue branch and also a real permanent member of the Knights Templars. Otherwise, these prospective knights' way out would be to join the army or do some other things for the Knights Templars. Therefore, what Long Haochen saw before was only the facade of the Haoyue branch. The real Haoyue branch was actually at the back. Here lived nearly 100 knight and more than 2,000 prospective knight. According to Nayland Shu's introduction, besides him, the Haoyue branch also had an Earth Knight and 7 Great Knight. All those who could advance to Great Knight would go to the Knights Templars to be appointed and rearranged. According to the different levels, the living conditions were naturally different. The prospective knight all lived in a house of 4, and the knight already had 1 house for each person. The place that Nayland Shu arranged for Long Haochen was next to Lin Xian's. After taking him to eat, Nayland Shu told him to go rest first. He would arrange for him to cultivate tomorrow. After reaching rank 3, no matter which temple they went to, the treatment was quite good. Because, in the war with the demons, they were the main force against the demons. The house that Long Haochen lived in was on the 3rd floor of the Knight building in the house district. It was a suite, 1 for resting, 1 for meditation, and a separate bathroom for washing up. There was a simple magic array in the quiet room, and a few magic crystals of light magic beasts were inlaid. The light element in the quiet room was obviously stronger than the outside world, and it had a certain auxiliary effect on cultivating internal spiritual power. Not affected by the good environment, Long Hao-Chen took out his personal clothes from the forget-me-not ring, and after tidying them up, he walked into the quiet room and began to cultivate. Time always passed quickly during the process of cultivation, and the afternoon passed quickly. Until the evening, a crisp knock on the door broke the silence of the house. "Who is it?" Long Hao-Chen woke up from his meditation. "Brother, it's me." Long Hao-Chen opened the door and saw Lin Xian standing outside. At this time, she was not wearing the soft armor from before, but changed into a white outfit. It seemed that she had just taken a bath, and her pink hair was still wet and hanging on her shoulders. In this way, she lost some of her heroic spirit, but more of her charm. "Come with me. Uncle Nalen asked me to take you to test your spiritual power, and then Sister will take you out for a walk and eat a good meal to welcome you." Oh, Long Hao-Chen was still somewhat immersed in his previous cultivation of internal spiritual power and the spiritual stove, so he simply agreed and went out with Lin Xian. Lin Xian tidied up her long hair, combed it back into a ponytail with a blue hair tie, and took Long Hao-Chen out of the door, back to the main hall, and went directly to the third floor. Nalen Shu was already waiting here. Seeing them coming, he smiled at Long Hao-Chen and said, "How was your rest? Are you satisfied with your residence?" Long Hao-Chen first bowed to Nalen Shu, and then replied, "The residence is very good. Thank you, Uncle Nalen." Nalen Shu smiled slightly. He liked this child more and more. He had such a powerful father, but he did not have the slightest arrogance. "You have completed the divine awakening, proving that you have the strength of a knight, but you have joined our Haoyue branch hall, so you have to register. So I want you to test your current spiritual power. Starting tomorrow, you will follow the Knight class to learn the skills and techniques of the Guardian Knight. If there is anything you don't understand, you could directly ask me." "Okay." Long Hao-Chen agreed, turned his wrist, and pulled out the heavy sword from his back. Because his father did not let him expose the ability of the disciplinary knight, he only carried one heavy sword on his back, and the other was naturally in the forget-me-not ring. "Little brother, you want to change to the Guardian Knight?" Lin Xian looked puzzled. Long Hao-Chen laughed and said, "This is my own choice after the last test. The spiritual power testing tool was the same as last time. It was still the black stone pillar. Let's start." Nalen Shu nodded to Long Hao-Chen. Long Hao-Chen's eyes narrowed, stepped forward, and the heavy sword at his right hand slashed down like lightning. On the blade, there was a layer of golden light. This was not a skill, but a phenomenon produced by the injection of spiritual power. With a muffled bang, a soft blue halo rose from the walls of the trial hall. Whether it was Nalen Shu or Lin Xian, they all stared nervously at the top of the black stone pillar. 268. A large number appeared there. Nalen Shu and Lin Xian both sucked in a breath of cold air. Lin Xian cried out, "Only 2 points of spiritual power to become a third-rank knight. Little brother, are you really a normal human? A third-rank knight that is less than 12 years old." It must be known that a year and a half ago, when Lin Xian and Long Hao-Chen met, she was only at this level of knight. In just a year and a half, Long Hao-Chen had more than doubled his spiritual power. Although this speed of improvement was related to both internal and external spiritual power, it could only be described as amazing. Long Hao-Chen put away his sword. He was not surprised by this spiritual power number, but it was obviously not his real spiritual power. After fusing with the saint's spiritual stove, his internal spiritual power dropped by more than 50 points. Otherwise, he should be a 4th-rank knight that was close to a 5th rank. "Genius, really a genius," Nalen Shu murmured. Lin Xian blinked her big eyes, fiercely looked at Long Hao-Chen, and said, "Unfortunately, you are too young. Otherwise, Big Sister will definitely take you first." Looking at her appearance, Long Hao-Chen's face couldn't help but blush. He still clearly remembered that more than a year ago, Lin Xian grabbed his hand and touched some towering, soft place. Let's go eat." Lin Xian pulled Long Hao-Chen, and after saying goodbye to Nalen Shu, she ran out. After leaving the Haoyue branch, Lin Xian pulled Long Hao-Chen to find the largest restaurant nearby and went inside. As soon as they entered, a waiter immediately greeted them. Miss Xina, you came. Lin Xi nodded and said, let's eat something. The waiter was a little surprised to see Lin Xin pulling Long Haochen. Two guests, please come with me to the second floor. Lin Xin shook her head and said, forget it, it's just the two of us. Let's sit in the hall. Let's sit over there by the window. Bring the menu. I'm starving to death. As she said that, she pulled Long Haochen over and sat down. At this time, the restaurant's hall was already half filled. Lin Xin brought Long Haochen to sit down and immediately ordered the dishes, but the way she ordered the dishes really opened Long Haochen's eyes. Taking the menu from the waiter's hand, Lin Xin ordered 5 or 6 times. While Long Haochen was wondering why the waiter didn't record the order, Lin Xin said, and I don't want the rest of them. That page of the menu had no less than 20 or 30 dishes. Sister Xin, there's too much. I can't eat it all. Long Haochen quickly said, having a new understanding of his sister. Her forthrightness, which was not inferior to any man, made him feel very comfortable around her. Lin Xion's face stiffened and said, why can't you eat? Your body is still growing. You have to eat more. Come on. What do you mean let people eat more? It's obvious that you're a rice bucket. Just as Li Xian finished ordering, a cold voice with a hint of mockery rang out. Long Haochen turned his head and saw 2 men and a woman walking into the restaurant, but when they passed by them, they stopped. The one who spoke was the girl. The girl wore a dark blue robe, and the faint elemental fluctuations made the robe faintly ripple with a faint blue halo. On the left side of her chest, there was a mark of 3 stars, surrounded by 6 golden patterns. A magic robe. Is this a magician? Long Haochen's understanding of magicians was limited to his father's narration. This was the first time he saw one. 3 stars and 6 golden patterns represented the 6th level of the 3rd level. This was already a real magician. The first 3 levels of a magician were Magic Squire, Magic Apprentice, and Magician. Bang! Lin Xian slammed the table and stood up and said angrily, Lin Jialu, who are you calling a rice bucket? Lin Jialu snorted, I'm calling whoever eats more. After looking at the magic robe, Long Haochen finally noticed the appearance of this young magician. It could be said that Lin Jialu and Lin Xian were both rare beauties, but the 2 of them had completely different styles. Lin Xian was straightforward and full of heroic spirit, a kind of beauty full of vitality. Lin Jialu, on the other hand, had the kind of spiritual beauty of a noble family. Fair skin, medium build, light blue hair draped over her back, delicate eyebrows, a fine nose, blue eyes, and the lines of her face were softer, easily giving people the feeling of wanting to protect her. However, she held a magic staff about 2 feet long in her hand. The whole staff was made of a kind of black wood, and there were a few thin branches of the same color at the top, holding a fist-sized blue gem. The magic elemental fluctuations on this staff were much denser than the magic robe she was wearing. You want to fight again? Lin Xian's eyes were filled with anger, and she took a step forward, arriving in front of Lin Jialu. The 2 young men who walked into the restaurant with Lin Jialu hurriedly took 2 steps forward, one on the left and one on the right, to protect Lin Jialu, their faces full of anxiety. They were all wearing warrior leather armor, obviously Lin Jialu's guards. What magicians feared the most was sneak attacks. Compared to their destructive magic, their bodies were much weaker. Therefore, outstanding magicians would always have squires around them. Ladies, please calm down. Last month, you were just punished by the consul and the chief. The warrior on the left reminded them carefully. Humph. Lin Xian and Lin Jialu snorted almost at the same time and glared at each other. Chapter 9. Lin Xian said fiercely, Last time? You still have the nerve to mention last time? If it wasn't for my father and Uncle Lin, I would have killed her with 1 strike. Lin Jialu sneered. If it wasn't for my father protecting you, I would have frozen you into an ice sculpture. Lin Xian said disdainfully, If you have the ability, don't use any magic equipment. Lin Jialu said with contempt, If you have the ability, don't summon your unicorn. Lin Xian obviously couldn't suppress her anger anymore. With a flick of her wrist, She drew out one of the two swords on her back. Let's go outside. I want some of my rose today. Let's see what you can do to me. Lin Jialu passed the magic staff in her hand to the warrior next to her. Okay, then I won't use the magic staff either. I'll show you my casting speed. Ladies, the consul and the chief have said that if the two of you continue to fight, you'll be grounded. The two warriors' foreheads were dripping with sweat, and they smiled bitterly and helplessly between the two girls. Hearing the word grounded, Lin Xian and Lin Jialu were obviously stunned, and once again they snorted at the same time. Lin Jialu sneered. Count yourself lucky. I'm lucky? I'm already a level 7 knight, and someone is a level 6 magician. I wonder who's the lucky one. Didn't they forbid us from fighting? Okay, Lin Jialu, do you dare to make a bet with me? Lin Jialu snorted. Bet on what? Lin Xian pointed at Long Haochen, who had already stood up behind her. This is my brother. I'll let him fight for me. You sent someone out too. If we don't fight, we won't be grounded. Previously, Long Haochen's figure was blocked by Lin Xian. Now that Lin Xian moved aside, Lin Jialu finally saw him. Lin Jialu's eyes suddenly lit up. Long Haochen's exquisite, almost perfect face, that pair of unique and rare pale, golden clear eyes, and that intangible temperament, all made her shocked. Looking at Long Haochen and then at Lin Xian, Lin Jialu lowered her voice and asked Lin Xian, "Is she a cross-dresser like you?" The muscles on Long Haochen's face twitched. He frowned and said, "I am a man." He thought to himself, "Can you guys not be like this? Why does everyone think I'm a woman? Can't they see that I have an Adam's apple? Can't you have some common sense?" Lin Xian said proudly, "What do you think? My brother is handsome, right? Have you ever seen such a handsome little guy?" Lin Jialu curled her lips and said, "So you have this hobby, liking little shotas. However, you're much older than him. Do you have any shame?" "You," Lin Xian said angrily. "Just tell me if you dare to bet or not. To tell you the truth, my younger brother is also a member of our Haoyue branch. He just joined us today." Lin Jialu was stunned for a moment. "Are you sure? You want him to do it? How old was he? Do you have one when you are 15? Lin Xian said, "That's none of your business. Just tell me if you dare to bet or not. If you don't dare, then hurry up and scram. Don't affect my mood to eat. Whose granddaughter are you? Let's bet. Isn't he just a little shota? Su Tiancong, you go." Lin Jialu didn't know why she didn't like Lin Xian. Both of them obviously couldn't stand each other's provocation. Lin Xian said, "Let's go out and fight. Don't affect other people's business. Also, since it's a bet, we should at least add a stake." Lin Jialu said, "What do you want to bet?" Lin Xian obviously had already thought of what to bet. She took out a white crystal from her bosom and said, "I'll use this magic crystal of the level 5 light attribute magical beast, Jin Yinhu, to bet on your shop's radiant shield." Lin Jialu's eyes moved slightly. "Are you crazy?" She also vaguely felt that something was wrong. Jin Yinhu's magic crystal was quite rare. Among the level 5 magical beast's magic crystals, its value was also one of the highest. Although the radiant shield was good, in terms of value, it was not as valuable as this magic crystal. She was so confident. Lin Xian tossed the magic crystal in her hand and sneered, "If you don't dare, then hurry up and scram. Remember to walk around me in the future." "Why wouldn't I dare? Let's bet." Lin Jialu was impulsive and directly agreed. Long Haochen stood at the side and didn't say anything. Although he didn't know what conflict there was between Lin Xian and Lin Jialu, he could see that although the two were noisy, their words were very measured. They weren't real enemies. Lin Xian had always been very good to him. For his sister, he couldn't refuse. They went out of the restaurant together. Lin Xian pulled Long Haochen's hand and whispered, "Brother, I'm really sorry. We haven't eaten yet and you have to fight. But you have to work hard. Sister is doing this for a reason. You must win." Long Haochen clearly saw a bit of slyness in Lin Xian's eyes. He nodded and said, "Sister, I will do my best." On the other side, Lin Jialu was also cheering for her retainer, Su Tiancong. "That little boy probably has some ability, but you must win. If you win this bet, I will give you a good sword when we go back. But remember not to really hurt him. Su Tiankong said helplessly. Miss, then we have an agreement. After the bet, no matter who wins or loses, don't make trouble with Miss XR anymore, okay? Otherwise, I will report to the consul. Lin Jialu said somewhat impatiently. I know. In front of the restaurant, there was an open space specially used to park carriages. At this time, there were not many carriages, just enough space for them to carry out the bet. Long Haochen had already walked out with a heavy sword in his hand. Just as Su Tiankong came out on the other side, he said to Lin Jialu, Sister Lin, I have never fought with a magician. Can you give me some advice? Huh? Lin Xin and Lin Jialu were stunned for a moment. Lin Xin hurriedly said, Brother, don't make trouble. She had seen Long Haochen fight and knew that his combat experience was not bad, and his previous test of spiritual power cultivation was also not low. Lin Jialu's two guards were only warriors who had just broken through to the 3rd grade. Without the support of the Holy Light skill, it would be difficult to win against Long Haochen. But Lin Jialu was different. She was the genius girl of Haoyue City who was as famous as her. Long Haochen said to Lin Xin seriously, Sister, my father told me that combat experience is often more important than cultivation. I want to try fighting with a magician. Lin Jialu walked to the side of the somewhat stunned Su Tiankong and said doubtfully, Little boy, you want to fight with me? Then your sister Xin, or we'll lose for sure. Long Haochen slowly raised the heavy sword in his hand, shook his head, and said, That is not necessarily true. Sister Xin, can I? Lin Xin looked at Long Haochen's calmness and firmness that did not match his age, smiled slightly, and said, Good, as expected of my brother. Let her know how powerful you are. Lin Jialu, don't cry when you lose. I will lose. Lin Jialu rolled her eyes at Lin Xin, and without reaching for her staff, she faced Long Haochen empty-handed and said, Then come. Sister Lin, please. As he said that, Long Haochen lightly tapped the heavy sword in his hand on his right shoulder and made a knight's salute. His toes touched the ground, and he charged towards Lin Jialu. Lin Jialu quickly spat out a cold note. She did not retreat, and a layer of faint blue light rippled out from her body. With the point of her right hand, an ice ball shot straight towards Long Haochen. From start to finish, it took less than a second. Long Haochen's eyes narrowed slightly, but he did not dodge and directly faced the ice ball. But at this moment, the ice ball suddenly sank, and with a bang, it hit the ground. A layer of blue light immediately covered the ground within a 2-foot radius, and Long Haochen's charge just happened to step on it. A chill instantly surged up from under his feet, and with a slip, Long Haochen's body swayed, as if he was about to lose his balance. Lin Jialu's face revealed a confident smile, and her mouth did not stop chanting the incantation, and a layer of faint blue light enveloped her. This was the 2nd grade spell, Ice Barrier. But the smile on her face quickly turned into shock. The moment Long Haochen's foot slipped, suddenly, a layer of faint gold light surged up from the surface of his foot. With a bang, the layer of ice on the ground was actually broken by his foot, and his body instantly regained its stability. Not only did his charge not slow down, but it also suddenly doubled, and the heavy sword in his hand suddenly stabbed into the ice barrier. A 3rd grade knight. Whether it was Lin Jialu or her 2 squires, they were all shocked. Being able to use the spiritual power of the Holy Light was the mark of a 3rd grade knight. This youth, who looked to be less than 15 years old, was actually a 3rd grade knight. Pu. A series of colliding sounds rang out on the ice barrier. Long Haochen only felt as if he had stabbed into an ice wall, and the momentum of his charge was immediately blocked. But under the sudden stab, a large crack appeared on the ice barrier, and it looked like it would not be able to hold on for much longer. Although Lin Jialu was greatly shocked, she did not stop her spell casting, and in a flash, a white ring of ice burst out from her body. The powerful force pushed Long Haochen, who was only a few feet away. This was one of the most common resistance skills that ice mages used against melee professions. In a situation where she did not have a magic staff, Lin Jialu's spellcasting was so smooth and fast that it was worthy of the title of magic genius. Long Houchin, who was pushed out, was slightly stunned and thought to himself, the battle between mages and warriors is really different. At this moment, more than 10 ice pillars quickly rose around him, blocking all the paths in front of him. The cold chill made Long Houchin's body feel cold, and the speed of the spiritual power in his body seemed to slow down a bit. Lin Jialu was slightly relieved at this time, and thought to herself, I almost fell for Lin Xian's trick. This little boy is actually a third-grade knight. If it was Su Tiankong, he may not be his opponent. On the other side, Lin Xian's side. In her opinion, Long Houchin, who had been imprisoned, would definitely be affected by the ice magic, and his combat power would be greatly reduced. Before he could break through the surrounding obstacles, he would probably be defeated by Lin Jialu. But it was also at this time Long Houchin jumped. This stupid boy. Lin Xian could not help but whisper. Against a mage, jumping at a certain distance, wouldn't that make him a target? The purpose of Lin Jialu's ice cage was to make him jump. It seems that he really has no experience in fighting against a mage. Sure enough, just as Long Houchin jumped, the corner of Lin Jialu's mouth revealed a trace of a knowing smile. One after another, ice balls bombarded Long Houchin. She was already being lenient. Otherwise, if the first-grade ice balls turned into second-grade ice blades or icicles, the attack power would be much stronger. But Long Houchin once again shocked everyone present. A layer of faint golden light came out from Long Houchin's body, spiraling upwards. With both hands holding the sword high above his head, under the cover of the golden light, his handsome face added a bit of a sacred aura. When the ice bullets came within a foot of Long Houchin, they all shattered on their own. The cold air they emitted could not penetrate the golden light in the slightest. The words light, severing sword, instantly rose in Ling Jialu's heart. The smile on her face instantly froze, and without hesitation, she once again set up a layer of ice barrier in front of her. The leaping Long Houchin descended from the sky, swinging his heavy sword downwards. The faint golden light instantly became stronger, turning into a foot-wide light blade that cut through the air. Light severing sword, a third-grade knight skill, Punishment Knight and Guardian Knight can both learn, costs 50 points of spiritual energy. Activating the holy light to protect the body and condensing it into a light blade to attack the enemy. The attack range is directly proportional to the knight's spiritual energy cultivation. This skill is the first long-range attack that a knight can use with his spiritual energy. Although it consumes the same amount of spiritual energy as the glorious sun slash, its power is much less. This is because Light Severing Sword is a long-range attack, and it is also a skill that combines both attack and defense. Even so, Light Severing Sword is generally a skill that only a level 5 knight and above can use. After reaching a higher level, with the support of abundant spiritual energy, the power of this skill will gradually be revealed. In the next moment, the golden light blade collided with the ice barrier, and with a crisp sound, the ice barrier instantly shattered, but the light blade sent out by Light Severing Sword was also cancelled out. Long Houchin's figure did not even have half a pause. When both feet landed on the ground, he charged towards Lin Jialu. Seeing that Light Severing Sword was blocked by her ice barrier, Lin Jialu let out a sigh of relief and thought to herself, fortunately, this little boy's spiritual energy is not too strong. Otherwise, this attack would not be easy to block. I underestimated him. However, along with blocking Light Severing Sword, Lin Jialu's face also reappeared with a smile. Facing Long Houchin's charge, she once again released the Ice Ring of Resistance. Light Severing Sword consumes 50 points of spiritual energy. It is very clear that the little boy does not have much spiritual energy left. As long as his charge is blocked again, he can only admit defeat. The moment the Ice Ring of Resistance appeared, Long Houchin's movement suddenly changed, his right foot fiercely stomping on the ground. He stopped his charge, and the heavy sword in his hand was raised in front of his body. The Ice Ring of Resistance swept past Long Houchin, but this time he was not pushed back. Instead, a faint layer of golden light appeared on his body. The heavy sword pointed forward, lightly resting on Lin Jialu's shoulder. Almost at the same time, Lin Jialu's two retainers sucked in a breath of cold air. Lin Jialu, who was preparing to continue casting, also froze in place. Although Long Haochen's heavy sword did not really land on her body, she could clearly feel the faint holy aura. Sister Lin, thanks for letting me win. Long Haochen retreated a few steps, sheathed his sword, and stood still. Impossible, this is absolutely impossible. Even a grade 4 profession can only be temporarily pushed back by my ice ring of resistance. Lin Jialu's face was full of disbelief. Looking at Long Haochen, the original smile on her face turned into shock and unwillingness. Lost? As a genius sorceress of Hao US City, she actually lost to a youth who is so much younger than her. How could she accept this? Even if she had been holding back and did not use any magic equipment, with her grade 3 6th level sorcerer cultivation, she still lost. Not to mention Lin Jialu, even Lin Xian's eyes revealed a clear look of confusion. However, she understood Long Haochen better than Lin Jialu. After a brief moment of absent-mindedness, she understood. Divine Block. When Lin Jialu used the Ice Ring of Resistance for the second time, Long Haochen used Divine Block. Compared to a year and a half ago, Long Haochen's Divine Block could be described as perfect. One must know that although the Divine Block was powerful, it had a high requirement for timing. The skill's effect only lasts for an instant. Hence, it requires the most accurate judgment to be effective. With Divine Block, Long Haochen resisted the Ice Ring of Resistance head-on without retreating, which was why he won under circumstances that exceeded Lin Jialu's expectations. If Lin Jialu had used her magic equipment or paid enough attention from the start, Long Haochen, who had consumed a lot of his internal spiritual energy to fuse with the spiritual stove, would have been no match for her. Unfortunately, Long Haochen's age was too confusing. In addition, with the existence of the knight's heaven-defying skill, Divine Block, Lin Jialu was in a tragic situation. Lin Xian was shocked by Long Haochen's judgment. How could she know that this was the result of being tortured by Long Xingwu every day? After fighting for 4 hours every day, Divine Block had become an instinct for Long Haochen, and he judged based on his feelings. Seeing Lin Jialu's unwillingness and absent-mindedness, Lin Xian was the first to recover from a shock. She laughed and said, "What do you mean by impossible? It only means that you're ignorant. You can't even beat my brother, yet you still want to challenge me. If you're willing to bet, you must be willing to lose. Hand over the wager." Lin Jialu fiercely glared at her, then looked at Long Haochen and fiercely stamped her feet. "I'll have someone send it later. Let's go." She didn't even eat and turned to leave. Her two retainers once again looked at Long Haochen in shock, then followed Lin Jialu and left. Haha, it's so satisfying. While speaking, Lin Xian hugged Long Haochen and kissed him hard on the cheek. Long Haochen was stunned. The next moment, his handsome face suddenly turned red. Lin Xian giggled. "Brother, you're so cute when you're shy. It's like you're a different person when you're calm in battle. Come on, let's go eat." Lin Jialu's defeat made Lin Xian's mood very good. She brought Long Haochen to eat a sumptuous dinner. Although she ordered a lot of dishes, her appetite was even more astonishing than the growing Long Haochen. The two of them swept away the food like a tornado and actually finished most of it. "Wow, so full. Brother, if I eat with you every day in the future, big sister will definitely gain weight." At this moment, Long Haochen still hadn't recovered from her kiss. Although the ice-cold and smooth lips only fell for a moment, that feeling was deeply imprinted in his heart. That warmth also made Long Haochen feel at home for the first time since his parents left. It's really good to have such a big sister. "Big sister, what kind of conflict do you have with that big sister, Lin?" Long Haochen asked curiously. Lin Xian snorted and said, "Just mentioning it makes me angry. Originally, when we were young, we were good friends who didn't hide anything from each other. About 5 years ago, we both fell in love with a boy from their magic temple. Although he wasn't as handsome as you, he was still passable. He was also very talented. Lin Jialu and I were still good friends at that time. After knowing that she also liked that guy, I was prepared to give him to her. But that boy ran to me and said that Lin Jialu used the power of her family to force him to be with her. For his future, he had no choice but to give in. From then on, I never saw that boy again. I went to find Lin Jialu to reason with her. Lin Jialu quarreled with me, saying that I was a liar and that I was despicable. Later on, the more we talked, the angrier we got. From then on, our relationship became like this. I don't know who was the despicable one. Humph. Long Haochen said doubtfully. Could it be a misunderstanding? Big sister, I think you should have a good talk with big sister Lin. Lin Xin said, what misunderstanding could there be? That boy is gone. Maybe he was harmed by her. All right, let's not talk about this. I get angry every time I mention the past. But although Lin Jialu is annoying, she still keeps her words. Haha, this time we've really profited. Even if you use the Radiant Shield until you reach the 5th rank, it won't be a problem. For me to use? Long Haochen was stunned. Lin Xin said, of course. Why else would I make a bet with her? I don't want anything from her. Don't you want to cultivate the Guardian Knight? How can a Guardian Knight not have a shield? Our Branch Palace's standard shields are too inferior. With this Radiant Shield, it can at least raise your defense by a level. Waves of warmth filled his heart. Long Haochen really didn't expect that Lin Xin made him accept the challenge and make a bet with Lin Jialu just to find a good shield for him. Lin Xin sighed softly and played with her fingers in embarrassment. It's all Dad's fault. He refused to give me more pocket money. Otherwise, Big Sister would have directly bought equipment for you. There's no need to think of this kind of method. Big Sister, Long Haochen said softly. Lin Xin giggled and said, what's the matter? Why are your eyes red? The little Shota was indeed sentimental. Let's go back. You have to start class tomorrow. Big Sister still needs to impart some experience to you. Just as the two returned to the entrance of the Knights Templars, a middle-aged man was respectfully waiting there with a large cloth bag in his hand. Miss Xiner, my family's miss asked me to deliver this. The middle-aged man handed the cloth bag to Lin Xin and turned to leave. Looking at his departing figure, Lin Xin smiled and said, I wonder how much Lin Jialu's heart aches this time. Her pocket money doesn't seem to be much more than mine. Returning to the Haoyue Branch Palace, Lin Xin directly followed Long Haochen back to his abode. Little brother, look, this is the Radiant Shield. While saying that, Lin Xin opened the cloth bag in her hand with some excitement, took out the shield, and handed it to Long Haochen. This was a round shield with a diameter of 2 feet and 5 inches. It was a medium-sized shield. Its entire body was dark silver, and the first impression it gave was that it was simple and grand. In the center of the shield, there was a round gem the size of a pigeon egg. The gem was pale gold in color. With the gem as the center, a pattern of a sun was engraved on it, and the pattern radiated all the way to the edge of the shield. The shield didn't look very heavy, but it emitted a steady aura of light. Try it. Lin Xin handed the radiant shield to Long Haochen. Long Haochen didn't refuse. When he saw someone as his family, he definitely wouldn't refuse a gift from the other party. At the same time, he was also willing to give up everything for the other party. After receiving the radiant shield, Long Haochen saw that the shield wasn't just a simple handle, but a metal sleeve similar to an arm guard. He put his left hand in, and the metal sleeve was slightly loose, covering his entire forearm. When his palm reached the innermost part, there was a metal handle to hold it. This way, the entire shield seemed to be completely attached to his arm, especially the faint aura of light. It gave Long Haochen a very comfortable feeling. Lin Xin walked over and adjusted the metal sleeve on his arm. There were some delicate metal buckles inside the metal sleeve, and she easily adjusted it to the most suitable size for Long Haochen. This way, when Long Haochen swung his arm, it felt like he was one with the shield. The radiant shield wasn't heavy, and with a light wave of his arm, Long Haochen immediately liked this shield. Lin Xin said, "This radiant shield can defend against attacks with spiritual power of 300 or less. After instilling spiritual power, its defense will continue to increase." The light's spiritual power emitted by can block most of the negative effects of magic, such as the freezing effect of Lin Jialu's ice magic. It's quite good when used with some of the Guardian Knight skills. Look at this gem. This is the molten gold stone. With it, as long as the shield isn't too damaged, it can repair itself. Perhaps it's not the strongest shield under grade 5, but it's definitely the most practical magic shield. Long Haochen tried to inject a little spiritual power into the shield. Suddenly, the sun pattern in the center of the radiant shield lit up, causing a layer of faint golden light to appear on the entire shield. Moreover, with the flow of light's spiritual power, it didn't consume much of Long Haochen's spiritual power. "Sister, thank you," Long Haochen said sincerely. Lin Xin smiled. "No need to thank me. You want it yourself. All right, let me tell you about the things to pay attention to in our branch palace." After staying in Long Haochen's room for almost an hour, Lin Xin finally left. With her introduction, Long Haochen learned a lot about the Haoyue branch palace. Early morning, after a simple wash, Long Haochen ate his breakfast that was sent by someone. Only the knight could enjoy such treatment. The knight would have to go to the canteen to eat. After breakfast, he went to the Night Palace early in the morning. The Night Palace was a 2-story building. It wasn't too big. The first floor was where the Guardian Knight listened to the class, and the second floor belonged to the Punishment Knight. When Long Haochen arrived, the spacious Guardian Knight classroom was still empty. He found a corner, took off his heavy sword and radiant shield, and put them aside, waiting quietly. One after another, the knight entered the classroom. After a while, the classroom was full. Long Haochen did a rough count. There were about 80 knight. Compared to the total number of knight in the Haoyue branch palace, it could be seen that the Guardian Knight was much more than the Punishment Knight. Although Long Haochen was sitting in the corner, he still attracted the attention of the knight. Most of the knight were only wearing a suit, so they couldn't help but look at him curiously, because he was really too young. "Look, who is that little guy? Oh, that's not the Radiant Shield, is it? Seems like he's from a rich family. But the Night Palace isn't a place where you can enter just because you have money. Could he be a relative of one of the instructors? You guys don't know about this. I heard from the brothers who were guarding the door yesterday that our Rose of Hell brought a little handsome guy. I guess it's this little guy. But why did the palace master allow him to come to our class?" An older knight walked in front of Long Haochen and said gently, "Little brother, did you come to the wrong place? This is the Night Palace, and the prospective knight classroom is next to it." In the eyes of these knight, even if Long Haochen was a knight at his age, he was already very talented. Long Haochen quickly stood up and bowed politely to the knight. "Hello, I'm here to listen to the Night Palace. My name is Long Haochen." Just when the knight was about to say something, a hoarse voice was heard. "Class." The knight was startled. He seemed to be afraid of the owner of the hoarse voice. He quickly turned around and ran back to his seat. Long Haochen turned his gaze in the direction of the podium. There was a tall and skinny middle-aged man with a round shield on his back. The middle-aged man's gaze also happened to look at him. "Do you have a problem?" The middle-aged man asked in a deep voice. Long Haochen quickly shook his head. The middle-aged man immediately said sternly, "Then why are you still standing?" Long Haochen was startled by the sudden increase in his voice and quickly sat down. The whole classroom was silent. Every knight was looking at the middle-aged man with respect. It was obvious that they were afraid of him in their eyes. "Newcomer, my name is Yihua. I'm the chief instructor of the Haoyue Palace. I don't care how talented you are. Here, you're just an ordinary knight. If you can't meet my requirements, I'll kick you out and send you to the prospective knight class. Do you understand?" "Yes." Long Haochen stood up again and bowed to the chief instructor with a standard knight salute. An ordinary knight? These words made all the knight in the classroom go into an uproar. This young man who looks like he's not even 15 years old is actually a knight? Are you kidding me? "Everyone, stand up." Yihua suddenly shouted angrily. Like a conditioned reflex, all the knights quickly got up with a swoosh. Yihua looked at them coldly. "Is this all you've got? How would I teach you? As a guardian knight, what's the most important thing?" "Calm down." The group of knights responded in unison. "Then, have you done it?" Yihua glanced at all the night with his gloomy eyes. This time, no one answered. Yihua said, "All of you, go and change your armor. Run 50 laps in the training field. Otherwise, you won't remember the lesson." Immediately. Yes. No one dared to refute. All the guardian knight trotted out of the classroom in an orderly manner. Long Haochen was also shocked. He didn't expect this chief instructor to have such a fiery temper. "What are you still standing there for? Aren't you one of them? Let's go together." Yihua pointed at Long Haochen and shouted angrily. Yes. The equipment warehouse was in the basement of the night hall. After Long Haochen received a set of equipment and came out, he couldn't help but feel like crying. He was too young. His body was far from fully developed. This heavy armor that weighed more than 50 kilograms couldn't be considered as wearing on his body. It could only be worn loosely on his body. He had to use both hands to hold the two sides of the heavy armor to prevent it from falling. The sound of metal clanging echoed in the wide training field. The training field was more than 600 meters long. Adding on the heavy armor, for these knights whose external spiritual power had reached 200, it was quite a heavy burden. Yihua stood in the middle of the training field and watched them run. "Don't fall behind. Whoever falls behind, run another 50 laps. Long Haochen, come here." He obviously knew Long Haochen's name from Nail and Shoe. "Yes, instructor." Long Haochen dragged his heavy armor and ran in front of Yihua. Yihua said indifferently, "You are new here. It is understandable that you don't know the rules. Now, I will give you a chance. As long as your attack can make my feet move, you don't have to run laps with them." Hearing this, the knight who were running laps obviously sped up a bit. No one even dared to look at Yihua, but many people's faces showed a look of pity. Yes. Long Haochen quickly took off his heavy armor. He held the shield in his left hand and the heavy sword in his right hand. Actual combat was the best way to improve one's combat power. Under the situation where there was enough pressure, it could also improve one's internal spiritual power. The key was that he wasn't afraid of losing. At most, he would just run laps. Yihua took off his shield. It seemed that he didn't care about Long Haochen using a magic shield like the Radiant Shield. He said coldly, "You can take the initiative to attack." "Yes, instructor, please guide me." Long Haochen was a little uncomfortable with the shield in his left hand and the sword in his right hand. After all, he had never used a shield before, so he felt a little awkward. But having a shield was better than having an empty left hand. Before coming to the Haoyue Branch Palace, Long Haochen had decided that he would never use his dual swords to fight with others. He would only practice the Punishment Knight skill when he was training alone. When Long Xingwu taught his son, he had taught him a very important concept. That was, never let your opponent know how deep your foundation is. Long Haochen's speed increased sharply. He rushed towards Yihua like a little leopard. His speed wasn't very fast, but his footsteps were very steady. His eyes were locked onto Yihua's body. He used his superhuman observation skills to judge the instructor's movements. The reason why Long Haochen was able to defeat Lin Jialu last night, other than the opponent underestimating him, the most important reason was because of Long Haochen's accurate judgment and calculation. And these were all based on the premise that he had superhuman spiritual power. Chapter 10. Looking at Long Haochen, who was rushing towards him, Yihua nodded in his heart. This kid's charging movement is not only standard, but he has also grasped the rhythm. He isn't sprinting with all his strength. This way, the impact might be weaker, but there will be more variations. Leaning his body slightly, Long Haochen pointed his heavy sword forward with the momentum of the charge and made a textbook stab. A silvery white light appeared on the heavy sword almost instantly, and the pure white blade was activated at the same time. Yihua moved only when the heavy sword was less than a foot away from him. His movement was extremely fast. He put his right hand behind his back and used his left hand to block the attack. The shield wasn't used to block Long Haochen's heavy sword head-on, but it was slightly tilted. With a clang, Long Haochen only felt that his sword was tilted. It didn't directly hit the shield, but instead slid along the tilted shield. The pure white blade brought out a series of sparks on Yihua's shield. The next moment, he saw an enlarged shield in front of him. With a bang, Long Houchin was knocked 7 to 8 meters away and fell heavily on the ground. During the whole process, he only had time to use the radiant shield to block in front of him. The next moment, he was sent flying. With a flip, Long Houchin had already climbed up from the ground, and his face was full of shock. Yihua didn't have a weapon in his hand, only a shield. However, it was this shield that ended the battle in an instant. Trash. Yihua coldly spat out 2 words. Long Houchin's eyes focused. He touched the heavy sword on his shoulder and saluted Yihua again. Instructor, please advise me. After saluting, he once again charged forward. The knight who were running in circles were secretly watching the battle. When they saw that Long Houchin actually got up after being defeated, they immediately looked at each other. This little guy is really good. This is the first time I saw someone from our branch daring to challenge Knight Azura for the second time. Little did they know that when Long Houchin was training with Long Xingwu, he was tortured. What was a fall? Moreover, the radiant shield had filtered out most of the impact. Long Xingwu wanted to raise his son to become braver with setbacks. At the same time, he wanted to learn from his failures and improve himself. Long Houchin, who was charging forward again, adjusted his footsteps slightly. His speed was obviously slower, but his aura was more stable. This time, he did not use lunging stab, but lightning stab. With a flash of golden light, the spiritual power within the holy light exploded. The difference between the lightning thrust and the lunge thrust was that the lunge thrust was an indomitable charge, while the lightning thrust was a retreat. Internal spiritual power? Rank 3. The knight who was running the laps widened their eyes in shock. However, Yihua's expression did not change. As before, he only moved at the last moment. The shield in his hand tilted to block the attack, just like before. The heavy sword touched the shield and made a crisp sound. However, this time, the heavy sword only tilted slightly before it was retrieved by Long Houchin. Long Houchin's center of gravity did not deviate at all. However, the shield in Yihua's hand enlarged in front of Long Houchin's eyes again. It was the same skill as before charge. Lunge, shield block. Long Houchin raised the radiant shield in his hand horizontally and used a firm stance to block in front of his body. Boom! Long Houchin's body was sent flying again. This time, he fell even harder than the previous time, to the point that he only stood up again after gasping for breath for a few seconds. Do you know why I was able to win against you? Yihua asked coldly. Long Houchin slightly frowned and said without hesitation, because your cultivation is higher than mine. Yihua nodded and said, that's right. Do you think that it is unfair for me to send you flying by relying on my inner spiritual power that is stronger than yours and not using my skills to win against you? Long Houchin hesitated for a moment, but still nodded his head. Yihua snorted in disdain and said, idiot, if you meet an enemy that is stronger than you on the battlefield, would you still question him like this? Then, you can only go to hell to question him. When facing an enemy that is stronger than you, what you need to do is to use your own advantages to make up for the gap, defeat your opponent by hook or by crook, and protect yourself. After Long Houchin pondered for a moment, his handsome face revealed a look of realization. He nodded his head forcefully and said, I understand. Thank you, instructor. While speaking, he once again bowed to Yihua. Please advise me, instructor. Yihua said in disdain, do you really understand? If you challenge me again, I will use even stronger strength to crush you. Please advise me, instructor. Long Houchin shouted loudly. In his eyes, there was a glint of persistence and unswerving determination. It formed a sharp contrast with his handsome face that could be described as gentle and beautiful. Come. Yihua still had a cold and lifeless expression on his face. Charge. Jump. This time, when Long Houchin was halfway through his charge, he had already jumped high into the air. He swung the heavy sword in his hand and slashed towards Yihua with a dazzling golden light. Idiot. Yihua stared angrily at Long Houchin. He clearly knows that he is inferior to his opponent, yet he still jumped into the air. Isn't he courting death? However, the anger in Yihua's eyes quickly turned into surprise, because this time Long Houchin had jumped over and actually arrived right above his head. The heavy sword in his hand slashed towards Yihua's back. At this moment, Long Haochen seemed to have lost his balance. However, Yihua didn't think so, because he saw the look in Long Haochen's eyes. It was impossible for the eyes of a person who had made a mistake to still be filled with persistence and determination. Yihua turned his body halfway and swept his shield in the air. At this moment, Long Haochen, who seemed to have lost his balance, suddenly had the faint golden light on the heavy sword in his hand disappear. Yihua retracted the radiant shield in his left hand to his chest and made an action that almost bent his body in the air. The radiant shield lightly rubbed against the edge of Yihua's shield. Yihua had used a lot of spiritual energy this time, and his shield had almost completely turned golden. Even if it was just a slight rubbing, it was enough to change the trajectory of Long Haochen's falling body. Yihua's entire body instantly spun a few times and fell to the ground. Pooh! The heavy sword was inserted into the ground, and a circle of dense golden light suddenly exploded around Long Haochen. Rising Formation, the third-rank skill of the Knight of Punishment. Even Yihua didn't expect that Long Haochen would actually use this kind of method to get close to him. Furthermore, his body flexibility was actually so strong that he was able to forcefully change his body shape in the air. At this moment, the shield that he swung out was in a raised position. Although the spiritual energy that erupted from the rising formation couldn't hurt Yihua, the impact caused him to raise his arm again, and he wasn't able to retract his shield immediately. Yihua's body also erupted with a large amount of golden energy, forming a layer of protective shield. Long Haochen, who had inserted the heavy sword into the ground and used the rising formation, also used the heavy sword to stabilize his body at the same time. Taking advantage of the momentum, the radiant shield in his left hand slashed horizontally. The radiant shield erupted with the brightest golden radiance that he had ever used and slashed horizontally towards Yihua's waist. Pa! Yihua's right hand, which was behind his back, finally moved and grabbed onto the radiant shield. However, the surprise in his eyes almost instantly turned into astonishment. A dazzling golden radiance erupted from his hand. Although his body was also releasing spiritual energy to protect his body, under the impact of this golden radiance, his body still swayed slightly, and he was forced to take half a step back. Long Haochen was also shocked. He had already used all of his strength. The radiance that erupted from the radiant shield was the 4th rank knight skill, Glorious Sun Slash, and it was the strongest attack skill that he was currently able to use. Even if the edge of the shield wasn't sharp, it was actually grabbed by Yihua with just one hand. One could well imagine how big the gap between them was. Yihua pushed forward with his right hand and forced Long Haochen to take 3 to 4 steps back. Very good, you won. I lost because I was deceived by your appearance and underestimated you. This is a fatal mistake. Thank you for teaching me this lesson. While speaking, Yihua clenched his right hand and placed it on his left chest, giving a knight salute to Long Haochen. Long Haochen hurriedly returned the salute. Thank you for your guidance, instructor. The knight students who were running had already completely stopped at this moment and were dumbfounded as they looked over here. Although they didn't see how Yihua lost, this fact was really too shocking, especially when Knight Azura actually gave a knight salute to a student. This was simply as inconceivable as a cat kissing a mouse. What are you all doing? Do you all think that my words are farts? All of you, start running, run another 50 laps. However, in the next moment, the Knight Azura in their hearts had already regained the demeanor of an Azura. An angry roar burst forth, causing the knight students to hurriedly start running again in fright. You come with me. After Knight Azura finished roaring, he once again said coldly to Long Haochen, then turned around and walked away. Long Haochen hurriedly followed, and under Yihua's lead, they walked into the night hall. A huge body seemed to have been waiting there for a long time. Seeing them walking over, the body smiled and said, How is it? I wasn't wrong, right? Oh, Master Nailin. Long Haochen called out in surprise. The owner of the huge body was none other than Nailin Shu. Right now, he looked like an old fox as he grinned at Long Haochen and Knight Azura. Damn fatty. Knight Azura snorted coldly. Nalan Shu laughed and said, "Zombie face, this time our Haoyue branch is going to be outstanding. All right, I forgot to tell you how old he is this year. Long Haochen, are you even 12 years old?" Long Haochen shook his head and said, "I'm still 4 months away from 12 years old." What? When Yihua, who had always been cold, heard this, his expression finally changed. Shock and fanaticism were revealed almost at the same time. Not even 12 years old. Not even 12 years old, and can already use glorious sun slash? How could he not see what skill Long Haochen used with the shield just now? Nalan Shu said proudly, "Didn't I tell you? Our Haoyue branch has a peerless genius." Peerless, do you understand? Idiot. Yihua didn't seem to care about Nalan Shu's ridicule at all. The coldness on his face became completely serious. He stared at Long Haochen and said, "Since you know how to use glorious sun slash and rising formation, then you have always been learning punishment knight skills. Why don't you continue to learn punishment knight, and instead choose to become a guardian knight?" Long Haochen said without hesitation, "I want to have the ability to protect everything that I want to protect. Dad told me that a person's power is ultimately limited. When facing the demons and protecting the homeland, the role of a guardian knight is far greater than that of a punishment knight." Yihua's eyes slightly brightened. He slowly nodded and said, "Very good. From today onwards, you will follow me alone to learn the guardian knight skills. Without my permission, you are not allowed to fight with other knight. Do you understand?" Long Haochen was slightly stunned and said, "But will it affect my training if I don't have enough actual combat experience?" Yihua snorted coldly. "You can say that again when you defeat me. Go to the training field and wait for me." "Yes," Long Haochen answered with some doubt. He bowed to Nalan Shu again and turned to leave. Looking at his back, Yihua's eyes gradually became fiery. "Damn fatty, where did you find such a treasure?" Nalan Shu proudly said. "Zombie face, are you convinced? You didn't believe me when I told you yesterday, but now you believe me. With this little guy joining us, in the near future, our Haoyue sub-palace will shine. Maybe we can even be promoted to the main palace. Also, let those guys who exclude you see how strong the disciple you taught is." Yihua didn't pay attention to Nalan Shu's show-off. He thought for a moment and said, "Do you know how much innate internal spiritual power this little guy has?" Nalan Shu shook his head and said, "I don't know. I asked, but he refused to say. However, I have tested his current total spiritual power. It is as high as 268. I think this little guy's innate internal spiritual power will not be lower than 40. It may even be higher. Why do you ask this? Don't you always disdain those strong people with high innate internal spiritual power?" The coldness on Yihua's face suddenly became a little strange. "If talent can really be substituted, I won't be limited to Earth Knight now. If my innate internal spiritual power can be more than 50, my figure will definitely be on the throne of God. Damn the heavens. They gave me wisdom and comprehension, but they took away my talent." Nalan Shu's fat palm hugged his shoulder and said, "All right, don't blame God. Didn't the arrival of this child Haochen give you a chance to show your talent? Even if you can't sit on that position, in the future, your disciple can do it. Isn't it the same?" Yihua took a deep breath. The redness on his cold face that was caused by the excitement gradually faded. "Damn fatty, thank you." Nalan Shu laughed and said, "You're still talking to me about this? If it wasn't for you, my 300 pounds of fat would have already been left on the battlefield." Yihua said in a deep voice, "You have to help me do a few things. First, from today onwards, unless it's for the knight rank assessment, I will use the temple's trial field alone. Second, block the news, especially the news of this child's age. Strictly block it. Especially don't let other main palace and sub-palace know. In a Monster Hunter Trials 2.5 years later, I want this child to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. All right, no problem. However, zombie face, don't be too eager for success. No matter what, you can't hurt this child. Pulling a seedling to help it grow will only have the opposite effect." Yihua said indifferently, "This child is stronger than you think. The reason why I see hope in him is not because of his age or talent, but because of his persistence. In the Knight's 10 principles, he has at least comprehended bravery and persistence. Moreover, this was a child who refused to admit defeat. Moreover, he had extraordinary observational skills and an unconstrained imagination that surpassed ordinary people. Although 2.5 years is a little short, I believe that he will still be able to shock the entire temple. Nalan Shu nodded slightly and said, "It's still the same words. Don't be too eager for success. I can't tell you about this child's origin, but perhaps in the near future, he can become the hope of our human race." Yihua smiled. His cold face smiled, and it was even uglier than crying, but Nalan Shu could be sure that he was smiling. On his face, there was a smile that hadn't appeared for at least 10 years. While smiling, Yihua walked out. His voice floated into Nalan Shu's ears. "I cherish this child more than you do. He will be the continuation of my dream." Long Haochen didn't know that he had just escaped from his father's hellish training, but had entered a somewhat paranoid Shura's palm. From this day onwards, the chief instructor of the Knights Templars Haoyue Palace, Yihua, who had the nickname Shura, suddenly ended his teaching in the Night Palace, and Nalan Shu personally took over the position of chief instructor. And that short-lived young knight also disappeared. A lot of people were guessing that the young knight might be the descendant of some big shot, but was abused by Yihua. So much so that the big shot was furious and removed this Shura instructor from his position. Of course, no matter what, it was a great thing for the knights. They finally didn't have to face that zombie face every day, and they also didn't have to undergo that hellish training anymore. Time passed day by day. Even Lin Xin, who was the most familiar with Long Haochen, rarely got to see him. She only knew that he was receiving guidance from Knight Shura alone. And even if they met, Long Haochen didn't say a word about his Shura teacher's teaching methods. The food in the Haoyue Palace was quite good, not to mention that Long Haochen himself was given special treatment. Training improved his physique, and with enough nourishment, his body grew very quickly. But what was a bit surprising was that the lines of his face became softer and more radiant. 2 years later, the trial field of the Haoyue Palace. Clang, clang, clang. The intense collision of weapons and the explosion of holy light aura were completely blocked by the magic formation around the trial field. Nothing could be felt from the outside at all. Bang! A figure was sent flying out violently. He flew for more than 20 meters and hit the wall before slowly sliding down. The figure that was sent flying was about 7 meters tall. He didn't look strong, but he was very slender. He wore a light blue suit, had black hair, golden eyes, a face like jade, lips like vermilion, and the space between his eyebrows was very soft. His skin was fair and tender, without a single pore. If he were to change into women's clothes, he would definitely have the potential to turn a city upside down with a smile. Long Haochen, get up. You piece of trash. How did I teach you? Facing an opponent whose strength far exceeds yours, fighting head-on is the most unwise choice. Just because I said you're a wimp, you can't help it? The most important thing to protect the knight is patience. Again, yes, the young man who was sent flying was undoubtedly Long Haochen, who was being taught by Knight Azura alone. He had grown tremendously in 2 years. Although Knight Azura couldn't compare to his father in terms of cultivation, in terms of teaching him cultivation, Long Haochen vaguely felt that his Azura teacher's ideas in many areas were even incomparable to his father's, especially his strange creativity, as well as his understanding and derivation of skills. He didn't rigidly adhere to the rules, and everything was based on practicality. Of course, following Knight Azura to cultivate was by no means a happy thing. Knight Azura's temper lived up to his title of Azura. The slightest dissatisfaction would immediately lead to punches and kicks. As for the actual combat that Long Haochen had mentioned before, Knight Azura had fully satisfied him. The actual combat that Knight Azura taught Long Haochen was different from that of Long Xingwu back then. Long Xingwu didn't use spiritual energy at all. He only relied on his skills to attack Long Haochen and train his skills. However, Knight Azura didn't. This teacher, who seemed to have come from hell, would go all out in every actual combat. At most, he would hold back a little and wouldn't really hurt Long Haochen's muscles and bones. It was a classic case of the strong bullying the weak. In such oppressive actual combat, Long Haochen's growth was astonishing. Every day, he would meditate and cultivate after he was exhausted, and his potential was stimulated little by little. However, the gap between the two of them was too big, and it wasn't something that could be made up for in 2 years. Although Long Haochen's spiritual energy improved faster and faster as his cultivation increased, there was still a big gap between him and Knight Azura. One must know that the spiritual energy requirement for a knight to go from level 1 to level 10 was 201 to 500, while the spiritual energy requirement for an earth knight was 201 to 4,000. That was almost a tenfold difference. It was the same for any profession. This was also the reason why the gap between the higher the level of the profession and the lower the level of the profession was. For example, Long Haochen's father, Long Xingwu, who was a Knight of the Seal, had a spiritual energy requirement of 100,000 for a level 9 profession. Clang dash, pause. A collision sound and a soft sound of surprise sounded at almost the same time. The battle in the training field temporarily stopped. The reason was very simple. Long Haochen used the radiant shield in his hand to block Yi Hua's heavy sword. A strong golden light was constantly being released from the teacher and disciple. Although Yi Hua said a pause, Long Haochen didn't dare to be careless. This teacher of his often did unexpected things, such as sneak attacks. You were able to block my attack head-on, even though you relied on divine defense. But your spiritual energy should have already broken through. Rest for 2 hours, then continue with the spiritual energy test. Speaking up to this point, Yi Hua's cold face couldn't help but reveal a trace of a smile. Every time Long Haochen made a leap, he would only reveal a smile. Of course, Long Haochen never saw this kind of facial expression as a smile. Imagine a stiff face suddenly twitching a few times, other than looking more ferocious. What other effect could it have? Yes. 2 hours later, boom! The dazzling golden light almost instantly illuminated the entire training field, as if the place was plated with a layer of gold. Yi Hua said in a deep voice, 1014. Very good, you finally broke through 1,000, just as I predicted. I have been stuck at level 5 of the 5th level for 6 years. My spiritual energy is around 3,000. If someone saw this scene and knew the exact age of Long Haochen, they would probably be so shocked that their jaws would drop. Every integer point of spiritual energy was a bottleneck, which was similar to the bottleneck when breaking through the last level of every rank. Yi Hua was stuck at the integer point of 3,000, and he couldn't advance even an inch for 6 years. No matter how hard he worked, no matter how smart he was, he couldn't break through this barrier. However, he clearly remembered that about a week ago, when he tested Long Haochen, his spiritual energy was only around 980. In other words, within a week, not only did his spiritual energy increase by more than 30 points, he also broke through a bottleneck. Long Haochen, when you were cultivating your spiritual energy these few days, did you feel sluggish? Yi Hua asked. Long Haochen shook his head and said no. Everything is normal. Ah! Yi Hua suddenly screamed at the sky as if he had gone crazy. Long Haochen, who was at the side, looked at him calmly. Obviously, this was not the first time he saw his teacher like this. After a while, Yi Hua's emotions seemed to have calmed down a little. Without even looking at Long Haochen, he said coldly, "Go back and pack your things. Go out with me tomorrow." Yes. Long Haochen put away his radiant shield and heavy sword, respectfully bowed to his teacher as a knight, then turned around and left. After Yi Hua watched Long Haochen disappear from the entrance of the training grounds, he once again roared at the sky and said with grief and indignation, "There's no justice in this world. Damned heavens, you bastard. Do you even have any humanity?" This little bastard didn't even feel like he was stuck in a bottleneck. What level of talent does he need to reach this point? In 2 years, he broke through from a spiritual energy of 268 to a spiritual energy of 1014. Damn it, didn't those old bastards in the temple say that under 20 years old, the growth of spiritual energy wouldn't be too fast and that it would only speed up after 20 years old? These bunch of scammers, did you see that? A spiritual energy of 1,000 at the age of 13, damn it, a level 4 great knight. With this kind of talent, even if I was given 1/5, I would at least be a Radiance Knight. Long Haochin returned to his room, washed his body, and changed into a clean set of clothes. After having a simple meal and preparing to return to his room to train, there was a knock on the door from outside. Big sister. It was Lin Xin. Although they could still see each other occasionally. When Lin Xin saw Long Haochin's handsome appearance, she still couldn't help but be stunned, especially when there was still a faint fragrance on his body after he took a bath. I just finished my training and saw you coming back, so I came to see you, Lin Xin said with a sweet smile. And as she spoke, she even touched Long Haochin's wet hair. Long Haochin said a little bashfully, "Big sister, you go inside and take a seat first. I'll go get you some water. Don't bother. I just came to see you." Lin Xin very naturally put her arm around Long Haochin's shoulder and walked inside. Although Long Haochin was already 1.7 meters, Lin Xin was a full 1.75 meters. Her slender thighs, slender waist, and perky buttocks had charmed countless people. It's just that no one dared to tease her, the rose from hell. Patting Long Haochin's shoulder and pinching his arm, Lin Xin giggled. "You seem to be a little stronger. More and more charming. Sometimes, Big Sister really wants to eat you in one bite. If I can have such good skin like yours, how good it would be." Long Haochin said helplessly, "Big Sister, you're here again. Do you think I want to be like this? But the appearance is given by my parents. I can't do anything about it. I just look like my mother." Lin Xin giggled. "Okay, I won't tease you anymore. Let's talk about serious things. The Monster Hunters trial will be held in half a year. I have broken through to the 2nd level Great Knight. This time I will work hard to become a member of the Monster Hunters. I have already talked to Uncle Nalen. This time I will also take you to see the scene. 5 years later, you will still be less than 20 years old. You could participate in the next Monster Hunters trial. This time it can be considered as giving you some experience. It's just that Knight Shura is not easy to deal with. You have to talk to him yourself. Even Uncle Nalen can't do anything to him." Long Haochin laughed and said, "Okay, I will talk to him. Big sister, I will go out with Teacher Shura tomorrow. I will talk to him then." He was also very helpless. Knight Shura gave a strict order not to reveal his cultivation to anyone, including Nalen Shu. In Nalen Shu's words, this zombie face was already sultry to the extreme. This time he was determined to amaze the world with a brilliant feat. Lin Xion's eyes suddenly showed a bit of slyness. "Brother, although you can't tell me how your cultivation is now, but it won't be bad to practice with Knight Shura. This time, besides us, there's several other people from our Hao US city going to participate in the Monster Hunters trial. Especially Lin Jialu, that damn girl, is also going. You have to help Big Sister later." Long Haochin was a little speechless. "Big Sister, you've been fighting for so long. Just forget it. I can see that although you quarrel when you see each other, in fact, you still treat each other as friends." Bah. Who treats her as a friend? "Okay, I'm leaving. You have to practice hard in this half a year." This girl had always been a swift and decisive person. She left as soon as she said she would. She touched Long Haochin's wet hair and left his residence. Looking at her departing back, Long Haochin's eyes showed a trace of warmth. Since his parents left, the only one who could make him feel the warmth of family was this big sister. In his heart, Lin Xian had long been regarded as his own sister, worthy of him using his life to protect. Long Haochin was not a person who was good at expressing himself, but he had a grateful heart. Back to his quiet room, sitting cross-legged, Long Haochin almost entered the state of meditation in the next moment. People with good talent may not necessarily succeed. Countless geniuses fall on the path of cultivation, and countless geniuses collapse because of their character. Apart from talent, Long Haochin's state of mind was able to improve his cultivation so quickly. He had no distractions, and his mind was as clear as a mirror. When he was cultivating, there were no distractions in his mind at all, so it was much easier for him to enter the state of meditation than ordinary people. Gentle spiritual power gently rippled from his body, and a faint golden light spread faintly from his body. At the center of his chest, an even more intense golden light slowly appeared. This light was actually fluctuating according to the frequency of his heartbeat. Pure light aura was released from Long Houchen's body. With the constitution of the Son of Light, it was much easier for him to absorb the light element between heaven and earth than ordinary people. More importantly, as his inner spiritual power cultivation continued to improve, Long Houchen discovered that his holy light inner spiritual power seemed to be purer than other knights. He discovered this when he was cultivating the Guardian Knight skill. Knight Azura, who taught him, told him that he needed 50 points of spiritual power to activate the same skill, but in fact he only needed 30 points of spiritual power to complete it. He didn't reveal this secret. In his heart, although he knew that Knight Azura was good to him and considered him to be one of his closest people, no matter what, Knight Azura couldn't compare to Long Xingwu's position in his heart. Therefore, he always kept his father's words in mind and never completely exposed his foundation. Not to mention this kind of foundation that was inconceivable to ordinary people. The faintly discernible golden light on his chest was the energy fluctuation of the saint's spiritual stove. This stove in his body had already turned golden. During the process of meditation, he focused his mind on his inner body. Long Houchen could see the saint's spiritual stove quietly floating in his chest. Around it, the inner spiritual power had turned into a funnel-shaped vortex that revolved around it. The inner spiritual power that was like a light golden mist revolved very slowly, very slowly. During meditation, it would increase the speed of its rotation. But if it couldn't be activated, it would need 4 hours to revolve one round. It seemed that this kind of inner spiritual power circulation speed was really too slow. However, during this seemingly arduous and slow process of rotation, every 6 revolutions of the golden funnel-shaped vortex, Long Houchen's inner spiritual power would increase by 1 point. In other words, even if he didn't do anything right now, he would at least be able to increase his inner spiritual power by 1 point every day. This little bit of spiritual power shouldn't be underestimated. 1 point every day would be 365 points in a year. In other words, even if he only slept every day, after 3 years, he would be able to advance from the Great Night Realm to the Earth Night Realm. This funnel-shaped vortex's movement began a month after he arrived here, when his inner spiritual power had completely recovered. At the beginning, Long Houchen couldn't sense it revolving at all. He had to use his mind to activate it with all his strength. Only then would it revolve with difficulty. From then until today, when he broke through 1,000 points of spiritual power, it could already revolve on its own every day. Long Houchen's cultivation speed was absolutely astonishing. Naturally, Long Houchen couldn't just sleep. Even Knight Azura couldn't find fault with his diligence. Perception, attraction, absorption, assimilation, filtration, and condensation. This was the entire process of Long Houchen's cultivation of inner spiritual power. Soon, he entered a meditative state. Early morning, Long Houchen arrived in front of Knight Azura on time. Let's go. Knight Azura still had a zombie-like expression on his face. Teacher, where are we going? Knight's Sacred Mountain. A mount? Yeah. A strong sense of excitement erupted in Long Houchen's heart like a volcano. The bright red, lightning-fast, rose unicorn seemed to be waving at him. Long Houchen shouted in his heart, I also want my own mount. Chapter 11. Knight Shura's attire today was different from usual. His entire body was covered in silver light armor. Apart from the shield that he usually used to train Long Houchen, he also had a heavy sword on his back. He also had a carry-on bag that he tossed to Long Houchen and asked him to put into the forget-me-not ring. Long Houchen's attire was even simpler. He did not even have any armor. He only had a sword and a shield. The shield was the glorious shield that Lin Xin had given him. Master, aren't we going to the Night Holy Mountain? Long Houchen looked at Knight Shura, leading him back in confusion. It seemed like they were going to the back of the Haoyue Branch Palace. Just follow me, Knight Shura said calmly. This was also Long Houchen's question. If it was someone else, he would have probably been scolded badly by Knight Shura. They walked into the training ground. At this time, the Knights' training had not started yet. Most of them were probably having breakfast in the canteen. The training ground seemed very quiet. Knight Shura stopped in his tracks and raised his right hand. He put his fingers together like a sword and drew a line in the air. Faint golden light condensed into golden runes that moved rhythmically in the air. Long Houchin had seen such a movement before. Lin Xin had used it before. Wasn't a method to summon a mount? Could it be that this master of his had also become a knight before the age of 20 and had been to the Night Holy Mountain? Golden light rose, and the golden rays were dazzling. They transformed into a golden door of light. Accompanied by a long cry, a figure walked out of the golden light. When he saw the figure clearly, Long Houchin could not help but widen his eyes. He had been training with Yi Hua for 2 years, but this was his first time seeing Yi Hua's mount. It was a big bird with a light yellow body. It walked out of the golden light and was more than 2.5 meters tall. The yellow feathers on its body were strangely round, and its head was slightly round. Its body was very thick, and there was a faint layer of yellow light shining from its body. When he was training with his father, Long Xingwu would teach him all kinds of knowledge apart from training him every day. Naturally, it included knowledge about demonic beasts. After a brief shock, Long Houchin recognized that it was a rare flying demonic beast of the earth element. It was a level 6 demonic beast called Mountain Hawk. Generally speaking, flying demonic beasts of the wind element were the most common. There were also other types, but the earth element was the rarest. This level 6 Mountain Hawk might not be very fast, but its carrying capacity and defense were incomparable to flying demonic beasts of the same level. "Teacher, so you are a Sky Knight," Long Houchin said enviously. Among the Tier 5 Knight classes, only those with flying mounts could be called Sky Knights. Otherwise, they would be called Earth Knights. Mountain Sky Knight was Mountain. Knight Hawk was. Knight Azura had a rare look of gentleness in his eyes. The Mountain Hawk lowered its head and allowed Knight Azura to pet it a few times. Then, it unfurled its 5-meter-wide wings and crouched down. Knight Azura grabbed Long Houchin and floated up, landing on the Mountain Hawk's back. Before Long Houchin could react, a strong gust of wind blew. The mountain-shaking eagle took a few steps forward and flapped its huge wings, bringing the two of them into the air. This was Long Houchin's first time riding a flying demonic beast. He was a little nervous and subconsciously grabbed the Mountain Hawk's feathers. The scenery below them quickly shrank. Soon, the Mountain Hawk had brought them into the sky. A layer of faint yellow earth element was released from the mountain-shaking eagle's body, enveloping Long Houchin and Yi Hua within it, protecting them from the violent winds. The mountain-shaking eagle continued to flap its wings as it flew into the distance. Long Houchin knew that a magical beast mount that had recognized its master had a telepathic connection with its master. This mountain-shaking eagle naturally knew where to go. Soon, Haoyue City became smaller under their feet. The Mountain Hawk climbed to almost 1,000 meters in the sky before it flew horizontally. Sitting on its broad back, it was surprisingly stable. Long Houchin wasn't even 14 years old yet. It was his first time experiencing such a wonderful scene. This Mountain Hawk was clearly an adult demonic beast. The feeling of flying was amazing. It would be great if he could have a demonic beast like this on his trip to the Knight's Sacred Mountain. Yi Hua said calmly, "Are you envious?" Long Houchin nodded without hiding anything. Yi Hua said, "You have the same chance. Now, I will tell you about the things you need to pay attention to when searching for a demonic beast companion on the Knight's Sacred Mountain. Remember." "Yes," Yi Hua said. "The Knight's Sacred Mountain is a magical place created by the ancestors of the Knights Templars. With the mountain as the cornerstone, it was built through the efforts of several generations. To be precise, the Knight's Sacred Mountain itself is a huge magic formation. As long as it is within the range of the Sacred Mountain, no matter what rank the demonic beast is, it will feel close to humans. At the same time, its power will be suppressed. In the Knight's Sacred Mountain, The longer the demonic beast lives, the more spiritual it will be. When humans enter the sacred mountain, as long as they are under 20 years old, have a spiritual power of over 200, possess the holy and light attribute, and have a token of the Knights Templars, they will naturally feel close to these demonic beasts. What you need to remember is that you will be looking for a companion that will accompany you for the rest of your life, not just a simple mount. It will be your most loyal friend. Unless you die, it will definitely accompany you for the rest of your life. It will even be more reliable than your future companion. There is a strong element of luck in finding a mount on the Knight's Sacred Mountain. When the time is right, you might be able to find a suitable companion the moment you take your first step on the Sacred Mountain. If there is no fate, even if you stay there for 10 years, 100 years, no demonic beast will be willing to pay attention to you. Therefore, after entering the Knight's Sacred Mountain, in a sense, it is a process of searching for fate. Hearing up to this point, Long Haochen asked, "Teacher, then how do I search for this fate?" Yihua sighed softly and gently stroked the feathers of the mountain-shaking eagle beneath him. Everyone's fate is different. Back then, when I met the mountain-shaking eagle, it was only a foot tall. The first time I saw it, I felt a strong sense of closeness in my heart. It very naturally walked in front of me, flew up, and landed on my shoulder. With the temple's token, I easily completed the equal contract procedure with it. Until now, it has accompanied me for more than 30 years. Therefore, after entering the sacred mountain, you must not force anything. Let nature take its course. When you meet the fate that belongs to you, it will naturally become a help to you for the rest of your life. Most of the demonic beasts in the Knight's Sacred Mountain will not attack humans, but there are some that are hot-tempered. When you enter their territory, they will remind you. When you meet this kind of demonic beast, the temple's token will show you. Don't easily try to enter their territory. If it thinks that you are fated with it, it will naturally come to find you. This kind of demonic beast is usually the stronger existence in the Sacred Mountain. Long Haochen memorized all of Yihua's pointers and didn't dare to be careless in the slightest. Companion, teacher is right. In the future, I will have my own mount companion. But what will my mount be? Teacher, is finding a mount in the Sacred Mountain related to my own talent? Long Haochen asked curiously. Yihua nodded and said, "Of course it is related. To put it simply, the acknowledgement of a mount is equivalent to the acknowledgement of your talent. The stronger the demonic beast is, the higher the requirements it has for its companion. Speaking of which, my luck was really good back then." While speaking, Yihua's gaze actually became very gentle. "Long Haochen, do you know how much my innate internal spiritual power is?" Yihua asked. At this moment, there was actually not a hint of coldness in his voice. Long Haochen shook his head. Yihua said, "My innate internal spiritual power is only 9. "Ah, only 9? Long Haochen clearly remembered that his father said that if the innate internal spiritual power did not exceed 10, it would be very difficult to break through from the 3rd rank to the 4th rank. Yihua smiled, but his smile was even uglier than crying. "Yes, only 9. While the villainous heavens gave me a smart brain, they gave me such a trashy talent. Even though I racked my brains and thought of countless secret cultivation methods, in the end, I could only stop at the Sky Knight realm. I am afraid that I will never be able to touch the Radiance Knight realm in this lifetime. When I was 15 years old, I completed the cultivation of external spiritual power and became a knight. At that time, I was ambitious and was called a genius by everyone. However, on the day when I completed my divine awakening, it was like a bolt from the blue to me. Innate internal spiritual power of 9, I was the trash among trash. My teacher, who originally valued me immensely, was no longer willing to teach me any abilities. He didn't even tell me where the Holy Night Mountain was. I was only 15 years old. How unwilling I was. I didn't believe that I couldn't become a powerful knight with low innate internal spiritual power. I was really unwilling. I believed that with my own efforts, I would definitely be able to break through myself and break through the shackles of the heavens. Therefore, I relied on my own 2 legs to walk to the Knights Templars and ask for my authority from the temple. After that, I relied on my own 2 legs to walk to the Holy Night Mountain and entered the Holy Mountain. Every knight below the age of 20 can only stay for a month after entering the Holy Mountain. If they can't find their destiny within a month, they will be automatically sent out of the Holy Mountain by the temple's token. I searched day after day, painstakingly searched day after day. Every time I saw a magical beast, even if it was only a weak magical beast of the 2nd or 3rd rank, I was willing to communicate with it. But even these puny fellows looked down on me. Time is passing day by day. Finally, a month was up, and I was about to be sent out. I really couldn't accept it. I really couldn't accept it. I looked up to the sky and let out a long howl. I was so angry that I cried bitterly. I knew that if I was sent out like this, I would really only be a trash, and I wouldn't even have the slightest chance of becoming a powerful knight. It was at this time that I met it. It heard my cries and descended from the sky, landing on my shoulder. It seemed to understand the pain in my heart, and from then on, it became my only family, my best companion. I was willing to use my life to protect it. It was like my closest brother. At this point, Yihua, who had always been cold, actually had tears flowing out of his eyes. The mountain-shaking eagle also slowly turned its head and looked at him with a gentle gaze, as if it was comforting him. Yihua gently patted its back. "Don't worry, old friend. I'm fine. Haochen, I am an orphan. In this world, I have never experienced true family love. Originally, I didn't believe in illusory things like fate. That was until I met my good brother. Only then did I understand that fate really does exist. It allowed me to feel the existence of family love, and it continuously encouraged me to use all kinds of methods to train hard. It took me 20 years to gradually break through the realm of a sky knight from a waste. During this time, I suffered countless tests of bottlenecks. A talented child like you will never be able to understand this kind of feeling. After saying so much, I only want to tell you one thing. That is, when you have your own companion, you must treat it well and truly treat it as your family. Fate perhaps only comes once in a lifetime, so you must grasp it well. Protect it well. Otherwise, if it falls, you will regret it for the rest of your life." Listening to Yi Hua's emotional narration, Long Haochen unconsciously clenched his fists. Whether it was towards his teacher or towards the mountain-shaking eagle, he was filled with respect. He had indeed put in a lot of effort, but compared to his teacher, what was it? If he only had the same talent as his teacher, would he be able to work hard for a nearly impossible goal like his teacher for decades? "Teacher, don't worry. I understand. I will use my life to protect my companion. I will use my heart to communicate with it." Yihuan nodded slightly. Although that damn fatty Nailin didn't allow me to ask, "Haochen, I really want to know how much spiritual energy you have. This will determine your goal in finding him out. The more powerful the magical beast, the more arrogant it is. I have never been able to see through your talent. Perhaps this time at the Sacred Night Mountain, you will really be able to give me a big surprise." "Teacher," Long Haochen looked at Yi Hua with some hesitation. Long Xingwu had told him that the number of his spiritual energy was an extremely important secret. However, facing this teacher in front of him, this teacher who was called Shura by others, but had an incomparably fiery and persistent heart, should he still continue to hide it? Yi Hua waved his hand and sighed softly. "Forget it. This is your personal privacy. Even that damn fatty Nailin doesn't know about it. You don't have to say it. It will save me from being agitated." "Teacher, I will tell you." Long Haochen almost blurted out. He valued relationships the most. And just at that moment, the loneliness in Yi Hua's eyes deeply pierced his heart. Yi Hua's eyes lit up, and he looked at him with a burning gaze. Long Haochen took a deep breath and said, "Teacher, for the past 2 years, you have been strictly teaching me all kinds of knowledge and skills about the Guardian Knight. Although you are very strict, and even use the method of beating and scolding to force me, I know that everything you do is for my own good. Even when I was training with my father, there were many things that were not as direct and effective as your guidance. Without you, I wouldn't have improved so much. I heard from Palace Master Nailin that I am your only personal disciple. You also taught me all of the insights you've gained from your research over the years without holding anything back. How can Long Haochen not know what is good for him? In Long Haochen's heart, you are like a teacher and a father. For others, my secret will always be a secret, but for you, I only told my own father the secret. Looking at Long Haochen, the muscles on Yi Hua's face slightly moved, and he slowly turned his head away, not letting Long Haochen see the crystal that had already appeared in his eyes. He never thought that his talented disciple, who was usually quiet, never resisted any hard training, and was as obedient as a beautiful kitten, would actually say such words. Under the seemingly weak appearance, he seemed to have a strong heart. A few strange notes came out from Long Haochen's mouth, and immediately after, a layer of faint golden light enveloped him and Yi Hua. Spiritual Barrier, rank 3 Guardian Knight's defensive skill. It has the effect of isolating detection skills and isolating part of the sound. Single defense. With Long Haochen's current spiritual power, he was barely able to use the spiritual barrier to envelop him and his teacher. So cautious? Yi Hua looked at Long Haochen with a bit of doubt. Long Haochen's voice also sounded at this time. Teacher, my innate internal spiritual power is 97. And Yi Hua answered. At this moment, he was still immersed in the sentence that Long Haochen said that he was like a teacher and like a father, and his heart was warm and comfortable. He had never married in his life, and having such a sensible, precious disciple, it was very normal for him to treat him like a son. 97, ah? What did you say? Yi Hua fiercely shook his head, and even a few tears in his eyes flew out. Even his voice had changed, and what did he say became what? Long Haochen smiled faintly and said, I told you that I wouldn't tell you. I just knew that it would be like this. Yi Hua's body was obviously a bit twitching, and he forcefully swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He suddenly waved his hand, and a spiritual barrier that was much stronger than Long Haochen's spread out from his body, once again protecting the teacher and disciple. You said your internal spiritual power is 97? Yi Hua's eyeballs almost popped out from his eye sockets. Long Haochen nodded his head. No, that's impossible, Yi Hua resolutely said. When you had just arrived at the branch palace, that damn fatty nail and shoe had evaluated your spiritual power, and the result at that time was 268. Since you went through the divine awakening, it means that your external spiritual power is the maximum value of 200. Therefore, no matter how talented you are, your innate internal spiritual power can exceed 68. Long Haochen scratched his head and said, at that time, my internal spiritual power had actually already reached more than 100. It's just that I fused with a spiritual stove, so my internal spiritual power temporarily decreased. Didn't you notice that when I studied with you for about a month, my internal spiritual power had obviously increased by a large margin? That is the recovery of the spiritual power from fusing with the spiritual stove. Spiritual stove? You still have a spiritual stove? Yi Hua almost pulled off the mountain-shaking eagle's feather, and he looked at Long Haochen with a face full of madness. Stinking brat, do you know what I want to do now? Yi Hua's eyes were filled with an ominous glint. Long Haochen was stunned for a moment. Teacher, what do you want to do? Yi Hua had the urge to burst into tears. I want to kick you off the cliff. Damn it, why did you tell me? I am practically a mental patient. Why did I ask? Asking to be humiliated. This is simply asking to be humiliated. After no less than 2 hours, Yi Hua gradually recovered from this unstable emotional state. However, every time he turned around and looked at Long Haochen's face that was as gentle as jade, it was as if there was a 9 written on the left side of his face, 7 written on the right side of his face, and a spiritual stove on his nose. Teacher, in your opinion, what kind of magical beast is more suitable for me to form a contract partner with? After another 2 hours, Yi Hua's emotions could be considered to have completely stabilized, and only then did Long Haochen tentatively ask. Yi Hua glanced at him. Naturally, the higher the cultivation, the better. With your potential, those 7th and 8th level magical beasts would probably feel ashamed of their inferiority in front of you, and wouldn't have the confidence to form a contract with you. The best result would be to find a 9th-level magical beast that was in its infant stage. All right, what kind of spiritual stove do you have? While asking, he took off the water pouch from his waist and drank a mouthful. Saint's spiritual stove. Yihua spat out all the water he just drank. You don't have any humanity. Can you not be so savage? Yihua's face was full of grief and indignation. Long Haochen doubtfully asked, Teacher, are you all right? Among the spiritual stoves that our knight can fuse with, the Saint's spiritual stove seems to be ranked at the very bottom. Yihua gasped for breath. If I continue talking to you, I'm going to have a heart attack. What the hell do you know? That's right, the Saint's spiritual stove is ranked at the very bottom. But do you know that among the 3 great Knight of the Seal of our Knights Templars, the 2 old fellows that were born as Guardian Knight, both possess the Saint's spiritual stove? I don't know. Long Haochen honestly said. Yihua resentfully said, the Saint's spiritual stove can be said to be the best spiritual stove for a knight and a team. With a knight that fuses with the Saint's spiritual stove, any team that explores the ancient ruins will be at least 30% safer. Fortunately, you told me now. After we return from the Knight's Sacred Mountain, I will properly guide you on how to use the Saint's spiritual stove. The mountain-shaking eagle continued to fly towards the north. Even if its flying speed was the weakest among all the 6th-rank flying magical beasts, it was still much faster than traveling on the ground. The Knight's Sacred Mountain was located in the northeast corner of the Temple League, adjacent to the Knights Templars. It was extremely far from Hao City, which was located in the south of the Temple League. It practically had to cross the entire Temple League's territory to reach it. In the Temple League, the 6 great temples' positions were all located at the border, forming a circle around the Temple League's territory to protect it. As for the Temple League's headquarters, it was located in the center of the territory. The distance from the 6 great temples' headquarters to the headquarters wasn't much different. It was precisely because of the protection and deterrence of the 6 great temples that the demons were unable to continue invading human lands for so many years. Among the 6 great temples, the most powerful was the Knights Templars, the most numerous was the Warrior Temple, and the richest was the Magician Temple. The Knights Templars and the Warrior Temple's strength could practically extend to every village and town. The Magician Temple could at least cover every small city and above. Because the Assassin Temple, the Temple of the Priests, and the Soul Temple had very few members, they only had branches in large cities. Even in a medium-sized city like Hao City, there was only the Temple of the Priests. The most mysterious Assassin Temple and the Soul Temple didn't have a branch there. However, that didn't mean that the 3 great temples with fewer members were weak. Each of them had their own formidable abilities and were an indispensable part of the Temple League. The Mountain Shaker Eagle's ability to fly continuously was extremely strong, and it only needed to land on the ground to rest once a day. Long Haochen had already told his teacher his most important secret, and he cultivated his inner spiritual energy on the Mountain Shaker Eagle's back every day. Yihua, who was very close to him, could clearly feel that his spiritual energy was continuously increasing. 15 days later, we're finally here, old friend. Let's land, Yihua said with some joy. Long Haochen gazed into the distance, and to his surprise, he discovered that there was a misty golden radiance in the distance, but it was somewhat hazy, and he couldn't see clearly at all. The area covered by this faint golden radiance was extremely vast, and he could vaguely see mountains within the radiance. The Mountain Shaker Eagle slowly landed on the ground, and its huge wings brought about a strong gust of air, causing the weeds below to stick close to the ground. Long Haochen followed his teacher and landed on the ground. He didn't feel any fatigue from the 15-day journey. He had been cultivating every day, and his spiritual energy had already increased by around 50 points. Old friend, you should go back first. The Mountain Shaker Eagle lowered its head and reluctantly rubbed itself against Yihua's body. Only then did it walk into the reverse summoning spell that Yihua had released. Teacher, is there a flight restriction spell on the Knight's Holy Mountain? Why don't we just fly over there? It seems like there's still a distance of over 50 kilometers to get there, right? Long Haochen asked. Yihua said. There isn't a flight restriction spell, but don't forget that there are many powerful magical beasts in the Knight's Holy Mountain. Although these magical beasts won't take the initiative to attack humans, if 4 magical beasts fly over their heads, they will definitely be angered. Unless your mount has the strength to suppress all of the magical beasts here, don't try to cross the mountain. Let's go. Just as the teacher and disciple were about to advance in the direction of the Knight's Holy Mountain, a violent gust of wind suddenly appeared in the sky, and a huge figure descended from the sky. Long Haochen turned his wrist and took off his radiant shield. Being vigilant at all times was a compulsory lesson for any knight. The huge figure slowly landed about 30 meters away from them. Impressively, it was a flying magical beast. This flying magical beast appeared to be even more spirited than Yihua's mountain-shaking eagle. Its body was about 6 meters long, and its entire body was light gold in color. It had the head of a dragon and the body of a bird, and there were long and slender 5-colored feathers behind its head and tail. After it landed, its wide wings slowly retracted, and it raised its head, looking around. 7th-level magical beast, Dragonhawk. Long Haochen recognized the origin of this magical beast at a glance. The Dragonhawk was a flying magical beast of the light attribute. For a knight, amount of the light attribute was the most precious, as it could greatly increase a knight's battle prowess. 2 people leaped down from the back of the Dragonhawk. One was a middle-aged man, and the other was a youngster. They had just landed, and their gazes were cast in the direction of Long Haochen and the others. Oh, I was wondering who it was. So it's Brother Yihua, long time no see. When the middle-aged man saw Yihua, he was stunned for a moment, but he quickly walked over with a smile on his face. Yihua still had a cold look on his face, and he didn't go up to greet him. This middle-aged man wore a light gold armor, and it was obvious that the aura of light was being emitted from it. However, he didn't have any weapons on him, and he didn't wear a helmet either. His long golden hair was hanging loosely behind him. He seemed to be slightly younger than Yihua, and the contours of his face were somewhat feminine, especially his pair of slender eyes, which gave people a vague feeling that he was showing off his abilities. The youngster beside him looked at least 70% similar to this middle-aged man. He looked to be about 17 or 18 years old, and he was tall. There was a hint of arrogance on his face. The middle-aged man approached them and said with a smile, "What? Brother Yihua, don't tell me you don't recognize me? Although we haven't seen each other for 6 or 7 years, we grew up together. Just now I saw your mountain-shaking eagle from afar. Although this kind of magical beast is only a 6th-level magical beast, it's very rare. I reckon it's you." Yihua said coldly, "Guaying, you're still so arrogant." The middle-aged man's expression changed slightly, but the youngster beside him couldn't help but say angrily, "What did you say?" "Shut up." The middle-aged man, Guaying, smiled faintly, and his expression had already returned to normal. "Yihua, teacher misses you very much. It's been many years since you left our Xiuqing city. You didn't even go back to see teacher. A teacher for a day, a father for life." Yihua's expression became even colder. "I don't need you to teach me. Let's go." As he spoke, he didn't pay any attention to Guaying and brought Long Haochen towards the direction of Knight's Sacred Mountain. Looking at their gradually disappearing figures, the youngster couldn't help but ask Guaying, "Dad, who is that? Why is he so arrogant?" Guaying said indifferently, "He's just a piece of trash. Back then, he was kicked out by your grandmaster. From the looks of it, he brought that youngster with him to Knight's Sacred Mountain to obtain a mount. That youngster seems to be younger than you. After entering the Sacred Mountain, if there's an opportunity, create some trouble for him." The youngster nodded somewhat excitedly. "I'll let him know how powerful I am. If I break one of his legs, I'll see what other magical beast will be willing to get close to him." Guaying's eyes slightly narrowed, and a bright light flickered in his eyes. Memories from several decades ago slowly surfaced in his mind. "Brother Yihua, you're going to become a knight soon, right? Why is your spiritual power increasing so quickly? Is there some secret? Can you teach me? Training depends on one's own efforts. There are no shortcuts." "Oomph. Teacher must have been biased in teaching you a special training method. Otherwise, you're only older than me by 3 years. Why would you become a knight? Pa, you dare to hit me? You dare to hit me. I'm hitting you. If you dare to speak ill of teacher again, I'll break all 4 of your limbs and throw you out of the city's main palace. Get lost. Don't let me see you again. That year, he was 12, and Yihua was 15. Gue Wu, if there's an opportunity, break all 4 of that youngster's limbs, Gue Ying said coldly, then walked forward with large strides. Gue Wu, who had a face full of arrogance, was slightly stunned for a moment. Break all 4 limbs. Isn't that too cruel? But I like it. A malevolent expression flashed across his face. Yihua silently walked forward. His face was still as cold as ever. But Long Haochen, who was familiar with him, could clearly feel that his teacher's mood was a little unstable. Teacher, is that your enemy? Long Haochen asked in a deep voice. Yihua glanced at him. He used to be from the same sect as me. Xiu City, adjacent to the headquarters of the Temple League, is one of the largest main cities. My teacher is the Knight of the Temple League Temple, a knight. He possesses a mithril foundation battle armor. Previously, I entered the city's main palace at the age of 13, broke through to the 3rd rank at the age of 15, and was hailed as the #1 genius of Xiu City in 100 years. I was teacher's direct disciple. However, 1 step in heaven, 1 step in hell. When I was discovered to have an innate spiritual power of 9, even a genius became trash. I worked hard in the city's main palace for 2 years, but the speed of my spiritual power cultivation was incomparably slow. Thus, teacher chased me out of the city's main palace. And among the people responsible for chasing me out, Gue Ying was one of them. He was also the one who ridiculed me the most, calling me trash. After saying this, Yihua closed his mouth as if he was just talking about something that had nothing to do with him. However, his footsteps suddenly quickened, and under the urging of his spiritual power, he shot forward like an arrow. Long Haochen couldn't help but clench his fists tightly, and he secretly swore in his heart, I will definitely help teacher wash away this humiliation. Although Yihua said it in a very simple manner, he could imagine that his teacher must have suffered a great shock back then, which was why he became like this. And that Gue Ying was obviously one of the instigators. Turning his head to look at Gue Ying and his son, who had landed 100 zhang away from them, Long Haochen's clear-light golden eyes revealed a faint light. A distance of 100 li was nothing to them. In less than an hour, Long Haochen had already followed Yihua to the vicinity of the Knight's Sacred Mountain. The closer they got to the Knight's Sacred Mountain, the denser the aura of the light element became. The fog that emitted a light, golden luster rose in front of them, and the looming mountain peaks stood tall. It was very obvious that the Knight's Sacred Mountain wasn't referring to a mountain, but a mountain range. The fog also seemed to disperse a lot as they got closer, so that they could see everything clearly. Gradually, they entered the range of the light golden fog. Long Haochen was surprised to find that this light golden fog seemed to be very pure light element. After entering this light fog, the light element was at least 5 times more than the outside world, and there were no impurities. You can feel it, right? The light element here is much denser than the outside world. The Knight's Sacred Mountain itself is a huge magic circle formed by the mountain peaks. These light elements are also absorbed by the magic circle. If our knight could train here, it would definitely achieve twice the result with half the effort. But it was very obvious that this was impossible, because the existence of these light elements is able to suppress the evil aura of those magical beasts. Therefore, in the Knight's Sacred Mountain, no knight is allowed to train. Even the guarding elders are not allowed. Otherwise, once the balance of the light elements in the magic circle is destroyed, it is very likely to cause a riot among the magical beasts. After you enter, it is fine for the spiritual power in your body to circulate by itself, but you're not allowed to use meditation to train. Chapter 12. Hearing Yihua's reminder, Long Haochen suddenly felt a little regretful. However, after entering this area, he clearly felt that the funnel vortex around the spiritual furnace in his chest had obviously sped up. Even if he didn't meditate to train, the speed of his spiritual power increase wouldn't be much slower here. Report your name. A low and old voice sounded at this time. Long Haochen was surprised. With the increase of his cultivation, his spiritual power had become stronger. He didn't know that the reason why he consumed so little spiritual power when using skills was not only because of his physique as the Son of Light, but also because of his strong spiritual power. But at this time, he didn't notice anyone approaching. City Lord Palace Ghost Shadow has brought his son Ghost Warrior to Sacred Mountain to choose a mount partner. With a flash, Ghost Shadow, who had been lagging behind, came forward with his son and stood beside Yi Hua and Long Haochen. An old figure slowly walked out from the front. His body seemed to be a part of the light golden fog, and his aura was completely covered by the fog. The old man was a little hunchbacked, not to mention armor. He didn't even wear a warrior's uniform. He only wore simple gray clothes. There were a few sparse white hairs around his bald head. The wrinkles on his face could definitely be used as a sharp weapon to catch mosquitoes and flies. His dim yellow eyes didn't have any spirit. He looked like he had 1 foot in the grave. It was as if a gust of wind could end his life. Bright Moon Branch Palace's Yi Hua, along with disciple Long Haochen, has come to the Sacred Mountain to choose a mount companion. Yi Hua's ice-cold voice rang out. Even in this place, he couldn't change his habits. The old man walked over very slowly. When he got closer, Long Haochen couldn't help but be shocked when he saw his appearance. This old man only had 1 arm. His left arm was broken at the elbow. His right eye was blind, and there was a huge scar on his face that extended from the top of his head to his lower jaw. It was as if his head had been split open before. When Long Haochen saw the old man's appearance clearly, he also noticed that his teacher, who had a cold temperament, actually had a respectful expression in his eyes as he slowly bowed to the old man. Ghost Shadow did the same on the other side. Long Haochen didn't dare to be negligent. He quickly followed his teacher and bowed respectfully. Although Gue Wu followed his father and bowed down, there was some disapproval in his eyes. Ever since he was a child, he had been a heaven-favored character in Xiu City's main palace. Whether it was in the Knights Templars or in Xiu City, who didn't treat him with respect. At this moment, he was somewhat unwilling to bow to such a disabled old man who had 1 foot in the grave. The old man's single eye swept across the 4 people in front of him. With a slightly hoarse and aged voice, he said faintly, "Take out your proof." Yes. Gue Ying and Yi Hua agreed at the same time. Gue Ying was a step faster as he handed over a scroll to Yi Hua. Yi Hua merely glanced at him coldly, then immediately handed over a scroll. The old man first looked at the scroll that Phantom handed over and nodded. Then, when he looked at the scroll that Yi Hua handed over, he let out a light cry of surprise. His gaze couldn't help but fall on Long Haochen, sizing him up a few times. Long Haochen vaguely knew that this scroll contained all the records of him entering the Haoyue Branch Palace. Naturally, it included his age and cultivation. At this moment, being stared at by the one-eyed old man, he felt as if his entire body couldn't hide. It was as if that single dim yellow eye had a powerful penetrating power. The old man's gaze quickly swept past him. Then, he waved at Gue Wu and said, "You come here." Gue Ying touched his son and gave him a look. Gue Wu hurriedly stepped forward. At least on the surface, he was respectful. The old man raised his single arm, appearing to casually land it on Gue Wu's shoulder. Gue Wu's body subconsciously trembled, as though he wanted to struggle. However, when the withered palm landed on his shoulder, his entire body instantly stiffened, and he was basically unable to move a single inch. A drop of sweat flowed down from Gue Wu's forehead. He could clearly feel that the old man's palm was like a mountain. No matter how much strength he exerted, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. 18 years old. You're allowed to enter. You can leave. The latter sentence was said to Gue Ying. With a flip of his wrist, a long token appeared in that withered palm. The token was completely black. He handed the token to Gue Wu and said, "If you encounter a magical beast of different rank, the token will appear in different colors. The lowest rank magical beast in the Holy Mountain is the second rank. The corresponding color is red, and so on. Yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple, white, silver. The ninth rank is the limit. If a golden color appears, then it means that you've encountered an aggressive magical beast. As long as it doesn't immediately express a sense of intimacy with you, you should quickly move away. If a magical beast is close to you, you could try to communicate with it through your mind. If you don't want to communicate with it, you can continue search by yourself until you find your target. The time limit is 30 days. If you haven't found a suitable magical beast within 30 days, the token will appear golden. After 20 seconds, you will be sent out, and the token will be taken back. Do you understand? Yes, Wu replied. The scroll in the old man's hand suddenly turned into ashes, and a gray energy floated out, fusing with the black token in his hand. The halo on the token flashed before it returned to normal. Many thanks, Senior. Ing respectfully saluted the old man before turning around and leaving the holy mountain. Wu also didn't dare to be negligent. He shot a glance at Long Haochen, who was not far away, before stepping into the pale golden fog, disappearing in an instant. The old man waved his hand at Long Haochen. It's your turn, young man. Let this old man feel your bone age. Let's see if you can really surprise this old man. Yes. Long Haochen glanced at his teacher, before slowly stepping forward and respectfully standing in front of the old man. The old man similarly placed his hand on his shoulder, and a warm feeling immediately transmitted to him. Long Haochen didn't move and just quietly stood there. After a moment, a look of surprise flashed in the old man's single eye. After withdrawing his hand, he once again sized Yihua up. How are you at Branch Palace? The old man said in a deep voice. Junior is here. Yihua took 2 steps forward and respectfully saluted. The old man's single eye turned, looked at Yihua, and said, Where did you find this little monster? As expected, he's not even 14 years old. He's actually already a great knight, and his spiritual power is over 1,000. Even when that little guy Long Xingwu came a few decades ago, he didn't seem to have this kind of talent. This is a real genius. Are you willing to report to the temple and let the temple train him? Yihua's complexion slightly changed. He also didn't expect that the mountain guardian elder in front of him would have a heart for Long Haochen. Thinking about it, a weirdo like him might not even appear in 100 years. Senior, it's not that Junior is unwilling. It's just that the Monster Hunter selection competition is in half a year's time. Junior is confident that my teaching of him is not worse than anyone else's. The old man thought for a moment, nodded, and said, All right. This old man is too lazy to care about these external affairs. It's up to you. Child, did you hear what I said just now? Long Haochen said respectfully. I heard it clearly. The old man nodded and said, Then you go too. However, you are different from him. Becoming a great knight before the age of 20, you can have one more privilege than him. If you don't find a suitable mount within 30 days, then you can enter the teleportation portal at the peak of the sacred mountain and randomly obtain a magical beast from another plane as your mount. However, if you drag it until then, you can only try your luck. You will definitely find a suitable magical beast, but it's hard to say whether it's strong or weak. It might even be a level 1 magical beast. Therefore, you have to work hard in the sacred mountain for these 30 days. Do you understand? Thank you for your guidance, Senior. All right, you go too. The old man waved his hand, and the scroll turned into a ray of light that fused into another token and passed it to Long Haochen. Long Haochen turned around and gave Yihua a standard knight salute. Go! Yihua returned the salute, and a stiff smile appeared on his face again, but his gaze was fiery. Only then did Long Haochen turn around and leave, and disappeared into the golden fog of light. Looking at Yihua's departing figure, Yihua was about to bid farewell, but the one-eyed old man in front of him said indifferently, This child is a rare good seedling. Little fellow, to be able to raise such a disciple, you are very good. Yihua's eyes revealed a bit of surprise. Thank you for your praise, Senior. The old man said indifferently, I never praise others. I only state the truth. You go too. Yes. Yihua retreated from the golden fog, but the respect in his eyes did not decrease at all. Before coming here, he did not tell Long Haochen what kind of existence the Knight Sacred Mountain's guardian elder was, because a knight who did not obtain a mount from the Knight Sacred Mountain was not qualified to know. These Knight Sacred Mountain's guardians were all the 7th-ranked Temple Knight who handed over the Mithril Foundation battle armor after completing their mission and retired here. There was even a former 8th-rank Holy Knight here. If it was not for the fact that the Knight of the Seal would only hand over the throne of God at the moment of death, it was likely that there would even be a Knight of the Seal here. Knights Templars was the head of the 6 major temples. In addition to the strength on the surface, the strength contained in the Knight's Sacred Mountain could definitely be described as terrifying. Other than the Knight of the Seal, no one knew how many retired powerful Knight were in this Sacred Mountain. But no matter where one entered the Sacred Mountain, they would immediately encounter the Guardian here. Although the old man just now looked miserable, he was at least a 7th-ranked powerhouse. Even if he was disabled to this extent, even if Yihua and Gue Ying worked together, they would not be able to defeat this old man. Moreover, all the disabilities on his body were obtained from fighting with the demons. It could be said that all the guardians in the Sacred Mountain were true heroes. Even if the 3 Knight of the Seal of the Knights Templars came here, they would have to salute these most respectable elders. They were all the pride and glory of the Knights Templars. So, even if Yihua had such a strange personality, he would still be so respectful when facing this old man just now. Brother Yihua also came out. It seems that your disciple is quite young. It is really rare to see such a young knight. I wonder what rank is he now? Gue Ying didn't go far. When he saw Yihua coming out, he said with a fake smile. Yihua coldly glanced at him. What does this have to do with you? Gue Ying laughed and said, Of course it has nothing to do with me. However, we will have to wait here for quite a long time. How about we make a bet? Let's bet on whether your disciple or my son will be able to get a higher rank magical beast mount. If I win, I won't ask for anything else. I just want to return the slap you gave me back then. If you win, I will lose 3,000 gold coins to you. How about it? The purchasing power of gold coins was quite strong. 3,000 gold coins was enough to buy a very good magical equipment. Yihua coldly looked at him and said, If you want to bet, wait until the Monster Hunters tournament. Mounts don't decide everything. Let's bet on the ranking in the Monster Hunters tournament. Do you dare? If I win, I don't want any gold coins. Just let me slap you again. Gue Ying's eyes turned cold. You are still so arrogant. How old is that disciple of yours? He wants to participate in the Monster Hunters tournament at such a young age? This is really the biggest joke in the world. You can't have forgotten that the age limit for the Monster Hunters tournament is 25 years old, right? Yihua indifferently said, You only need to answer whether you dare or not. Gue Ying's pupils contracted. I dare. Why wouldn't I dare? Originally, I wanted to let Gue Wu go to the Monster Hunters tournament to temper himself. When he is 23 years old and participates in the tournament for the second time, he will amaze the world. That son of mine is already a rank 8 knight this year. Maybe he will really be able to fight his way into the final stage and become a demon hunter. Yihua said, Then let's wait and see. Wash your face clean so that you won't dirty my hands. Gue Ying was so angry that his face turned green. However, he didn't dare to make a move here. This was the territory of the Sacred Mountain. If he alarmed those protectors, even if he came from the Shio City Lord Palace, he wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. Long Haochen stepped into the glowing fog. The light elements seemed to have become even denser, giving him an indescribable feeling of comfort. He thought to himself, Even if I have already found a magical beast companion, it seems that I should stay here for the full 30 days. He could clearly feel that the spiritual energy inside his funnel vortex had already doubled in speed. It was almost the same speed as when he was meditating. Under such circumstances, he could increase his spiritual energy by at least 3 or 4 points every day. Just as he was walking forward, suddenly, the view in front of him became clear. He seemed to have already passed through the layer of fog. The scenery in front of him also became clear. Raising his head to look at the sky, he was surprised to find that what he saw wasn't fog, but a clear blue sky. It was as if the faint, golden, glowing fog that seemed very hazy in the outside world had completely disappeared. The bright and warm sunlight sprinkled down, and in front of him was the shadow of a jagged tree. The fresh air with the fragrance of plants washed away his fatigue in an instant. He was now at the foot of a mountain. All he could see was the forest in front of him. The thick trees were at least 40 to 50 meters tall. There were many kinds of plants in the forest, but there was no path at all. He took off the radiant shield with his left hand and drew the heavy sword with his right. He held the black token with the sword hilt so that he could observe it at any time. With a whoosh, a yellow figure leaped in front of him. It was a monkey-type magical beast. It landed on a branch not far away and grinned at Long Houchen before turning around and running away. What a mystical spell formation! Long Houchen sighed in his heart. In the outside world, almost all magical beasts were hostile to humans. When they encountered humans, 80% of them would take the initiative to attack. After being baptized by the light aura of the Knights Templar's spell formation, they became much friendlier. This knight's holy mountain was really a mystical place. He lowered his head and looked at the token in his hand. An orange light flashed, showing that the level of the magical beast just now was 3rd rank. Not daring to waste any time, Long Houchen strode into the forest. He chanted a few notes, and a defensive barrier was released, enveloping him. As he walked forward, he carefully observed everything around him. Yihua had told him that after entering the Knight's Holy Mountain, the first thing to do was to climb to the top of a mountain. Only then would he be able to determine the direction. He walked towards the inside of the Holy Mountain. The closer he got to the center, the stronger the magical beasts he would encounter. The vegetation in the forest was really too dense, so much so that Long Houchen had to use his heavy sword to open up a path. His climbing speed was not very fast. It took him a full hour to climb to the top of the first mountain. On the way, he also encountered a few magical beasts, but their levels were not high. Most of them were 3rd or 4th rank magical beasts. When these magical beasts saw him, they did not show any intention of being close to him. After climbing to the top of the mountain, the scenery in front of him suddenly opened up. The undulating mountain range was clearly presented in front of him. This was a sea of green. On a mountain peak in the distance, there were some exceptionally tall trees. Even from his position, he could see them clearly. So beautiful! Long Houchen could not help but sigh. Such a vast and magnificent scenery made his mood suddenly brighten up. He took a deep breath, and the abundant light elements seemed to be revolving around his body. He resisted the urge to sit down and meditate. He identified the direction of the center of the holy mountain and sped up. The area of the Knight's Holy Mountain was huge, and it was very difficult to move forward. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. Long Houchen had climbed to the top of the mountain more than 10 times to observe. He realized that he had only entered about 1/3 of the distance. He was still very far from the center of the holy mountain. Moreover, the deeper he went, the higher the mountain peak was, and the difficulty of climbing increased accordingly. However, as he continued to move forward, the level of the magical beasts he encountered also gradually increased. 5th and 6th rank magical beasts emerged one after another. Unfortunately, none of the magical beasts showed any signs of getting close to him. In the forget-me-not ring, he brought enough dry food and water bags. Long Houchen would rest for about 6 hours every day. Although he didn't dare to meditate, he could clearly feel his spiritual power improving. A water source. After climbing another mountain, Long Houchen was pleasantly surprised to see a lake in the valley on the other side of the mountain. Looking down from the top of the mountain, the lake was like a huge sapphire embedded in the mountains, reflecting the sunlight from the sky. It was like a paradise on earth. That's great. Teacher said that. Magical beasts were the most abundant in places with water, and there was no lack of experts. Maybe I can find my companions here. Without any delay, he hurried down the mountain. Perhaps it was because he had a goal now, but this time he moved very quickly and reached the bottom of the mountain in a short while. From afar, he could already see some magical beasts drinking water by the lake. He stopped, slowed down, and slowly approached the front. Soon he saw a strange scene. Long Houchin was shocked. What was that? More than 10 unicorns were wandering by the lake drinking water. These unicorns were obviously of the same species. Their bodies were snow white. The mane on their necks was golden, and a spiral-shaped golden horn stood proudly on top of their heads. Every unicorn had a pair of huge wings, and the outermost feathers on their pure white wings were golden. As they walked, one could vaguely see the golden halos emitting from their bodies. This is Starlight Unicorn? Unicorns were undoubtedly the knight's favorite mount. They were extremely powerful in the sky and on the ground. They were truly powerful on the ground and on the ground. Also, unicorns were gentle and relatively easy to tame. Of course, they were also arrogant. Only by conquering them or being favored by them could there be a possibility of a contract. The Starlight Unicorn was one of the best among the unicorns. An adult Starlight Unicorn was a pinnacle level 8 magical beast. It was only a step away from level 9. It was second only to the Holy Unicorn of level 9. The Starlight Unicorn was a magical beast of the light attribute. If a survey was conducted and the knight was asked what mount they wanted the most, then at least half of them would choose it. Seeing the Starlight Unicorn, Long Houchin almost stopped breathing. This was even more powerful than his sister's Rose Unicorn. They were so beautiful. The lines of their bodies were a combination of strength and beauty. The rich holy aura was so pure that it seemed like the surface of a lake they touched would ripple with faint golden light. Taking a deep breath, Long Houchin put away his heavy sword and shield. He knew that his chance had come. He tried his best to calm himself down and slowly walked toward the Starlight Unicorns. Even if they were not on the knight's sacred mountain, the kind Starlight Unicorns would not attack humans easily, not to mention that they were affected by the magic circle here. Among the Starlight Unicorns, there was a particularly tall one. It was 6 feet long and 6 feet tall. Its horn was almost 2 feet long. Its pale golden eyes were shining brightly. While the other unicorns were drinking water, it was the only one standing there quietly, observing everything around it. Without a doubt, this unicorn was the king of this place. Seeing Long Houchin slowly walking toward it, the Starlight Unicorn paused for a moment. Its right front hoof lightly dug the ground. Long Houchin quickly stopped and said sincerely, "Dear Starlight Unicorn, I am a knight from Knights Templars. I am here to look for my partner. I wonder if I can communicate with you." High-level magical beasts were extremely intelligent, not inferior to humans. The higher the level of a magical beast, the harder it was to gain their approval. Trying to communicate was the first step. The Starlight Unicorn King's golden eyes fell on Long Houchin. Its gaze was also pale golden, but it was clearer. The Starlight Unicorn couldn't help but be slightly stunned. A dense golden light gushed out from the horn on its head, forming a golden light screen that shrouded Long Houchin's body. Immediately, a faint layer of gold appeared on Long Houchin's body, especially his chest, which was shining with golden light. The abundant holy aura made Long Houchin feel warmth and affinity. He was overjoyed. The fact that the king of the unicorns was willing to communicate with him meant that he had a chance to gain its approval. Plus, there was that familiar feeling. "Hello, human." A gentle male voice rang in Long Houchin's mind. Although Long Xingwu had already told Long Houchin that high-level magical beasts could communicate with humans, he was still a little nervous to communicate with a magical beast of this level for the first time. He hurriedly said in his mind, "Hello, Starlight Unicorn." The Starlight Unicorn said, "The aura of light on your body is very pure, even stronger than mine. It makes me feel very comfortable." Long Houchin's heartbeat suddenly sped up. Then, "Can I become your partner?" The most crucial moment had arrived. If the Starlight Unicorn agreed, then Long Houchin would have a powerful magical beast at the peak of the 8th level as a mount. This was not a unicorn in its infancy. With such a powerful mount, even the Earth Knight might not be its match. The Starlight Unicorn fell silent after hearing Long Houchin's question. The golden light emitted from the horn became even more intense. Affected by the golden light, Long Houchin's eyes shone brightly, and the figure of the unicorn was reflected in his clear eyes. "I really want to agree. The Starlight Unicorn actually used honorifics. But I can't lie to you. Long Houchin was stunned. What do you mean? Revered scion of light, I can see your source of light. I really want to become your mount, your partner. If that's the case, then I might be able to become a magical beast of the 9th level in my lifetime. But I can't do that, because we unicorns are honest beings. With my talent, I don't have the right to serve the scion of light. I'm sorry, but I can only refuse. Don't have the right? Long Houchin was stunned. He wouldn't have been so surprised even if the Starlight Unicorn said he didn't have the right. This was a powerful existence at the peak of the 8th level. If it didn't have the right, then what kind of magical beast partner would he have to find? I'm afraid you've made a wasted trip. As far as I know, within the Sacred Night Mountain, I'm not the only one who doesn't have the right. Even those magical beasts of the 9th level and their descendants don't have the right to be your partner. The Starlight Unicorn sighed. Long Houchin was dumbfounded. Then what kind of magical beast do I have to find to become my mount partner? The Starlight Unicorn said, you need a partner with the same talent as you. How could such an existence be restricted to the Sacred Night Mountain? Although the environment here is good, unless we sign a contract, we won't have true freedom. We'll never be able to leave this place. Long Houchin smiled wryly. Then how am I supposed to find one? The Starlight Unicorn said, it's not like there's no chance at all. Within the Sacred Night Mountain, there's a core teleportation formation. Every once in a while, new magical beasts will be teleported over. If you can choose from those humans directly through the teleportation formation, then perhaps you can find a suitable partner. However, there's also a chance that you'll find a low-level partner. Thank you. Long Houchin was a bit disappointed. The golden light retracted, and the Starlight Unicorn nodded to Long Houchin again before turning its attention to its own clansman. A disdainful voice sounded. The disciple of trash is also trash. How dare he dream of obtaining a mount like the Starlight Unicorn? What a joke. A figure walked out from the forest. Long Houchin's eyes narrowed, and a hint of anger immediately appeared in his eyes. The figure that had walked out of the forest was a giant magical beast that was over 6 meters long and 5 meters tall. This magical beast was crimson in color and covered in thick scales. Its head was in the shape of a dragon, and its body was particularly thick and powerful. There was a person sitting on its back. Wasn't that the ghost warrior who had entered the Sacred Night Mountain before Long Houchin? Scarlet-scaled Earth Dragon, a mid-tier 7th level magical beast. However, this scarlet-scaled Earth Dragon was clearly still underage. Although it couldn't fly, it was extremely powerful on the ground. Fire attribute. In just a few days, this ghost warrior had already found a mount that belonged to him. In terms of rank, this scarlet-scaled Earth Dragon was an existence of the same rank as his father's Dragon Eagle. You're not allowed to insult my teacher. Long Houchin shouted in a deep voice. Ghost warrior snorted disdainfully. You're not convinced? Fine, come and fight me. Don't worry, I won't kill you. At most, I'll just break your limbs. As he spoke, a light flashed in his hands. A shield appeared in his left hand, and a spear appeared in his right hand. The knight usually only had 2 kinds of weapons. Other than the heavy sword, the other was the spear. Not to mention that he already had a mount. Even without this scarlet-scaled Earth Dragon, Ghost Warrior had enough confidence to defeat Long Houchin. Taking out his shield and sword, Long Houchin didn't show any cowardice when facing Ghost Warrior riding on the scarlet-scaled Earth Dragon. Just as he was about to accept Ghost Warrior's challenge, suddenly, a ray of golden light shot out from his side. The glaring golden light instantly enveloped Ghost Warrior and the scarlet-scaled Earth Dragon. The brilliant star Unicorn King from before appeared by Long Houchin's side. The scarlet-scaled Earth Dragon's eyes immediately revealed a clear fear. Ghost Warrior also felt a strong pressure, and his heart was overwhelmed with shock. Could it be that he had really obtained the recognition of the brilliant star Unicorn? No, that's impossible. But Ghost Warrior wasn't a fool. How could he dare to contend against a peak level 8 magical beast in front of him? Almost at the first moment, he used his spiritual energy to activate the token. A rich golden light instantly spread out. With a flash of light, he and the scarlet-scaled earth dragon were teleported away. The change in front of him caused Long Houchin to be startled. The brilliant star unicorn king slowly lowered its head and rubbed against his shoulder. Its gentle gaze seemed to be saying that the dignity of the scion of light wasn't something that a clown could offend. With a long neigh, the brilliant star unicorn took another look at Long Houchin and suddenly rushed out. The brilliant star unicorns that were drinking water earlier followed closely behind. Spreading their wings, they soared into the sky while emitting a dazzling golden radiance. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared among the mountains. Somewhat sluggishly standing in the same place, Long Houchin didn't immerse himself in disappointment for too long. Because a magical beast like the brilliant star unicorn was most suitable to become a knight's mount. Whether it was Long Xingwu or Yi Hua, both of them had explained the characteristics of this magical beast in detail to him. The brilliant star unicorn was a symbol of light. They were kind and gentle by nature, and they would never lie. They would protect their companions with their lives, and they wouldn't kill their enemies either. In the Temple League, the Prince Charming that the girls fantasized about would come riding on this kind of brilliant star unicorn. If it wasn't lying to me, then I'm afraid I won't gain anything from this trip. I can only try my luck through the teleportation spell, or I can hunt magical beasts myself and tame them in the future. These two paths were very uncertain, but there was no doubt that the former would have more chances. After all, there was a possibility of obtaining a magical beast companion through the spell, and there was also the possibility of obtaining a powerful expert. However, it was impossible to hunt magical beasts. With his current cultivation, he could at most fight against a low-tier level 5 magical beast. Even the level 8 brilliant star unicorn said that it wasn't worthy of his talent. So how could Long Houchin be willing to hunt a level 5 magical beast? Moreover, his target was his father, and he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps to become a Knight of the Seal. If the future Knight of the Seal only had a level 5 magical beast as a mount, wouldn't it be the biggest joke in the world? After thinking for a moment, Long Houchin made his final decision. I'll take a gamble. Although he had made his decision, Long Houchin didn't teleport out of the Knight's sacred mountain immediately. He couldn't possibly tell the brilliant star unicorn's words to the elder guarding the sacred mountain. If that happened, the fact that he had the constitution of the Son of Light would be exposed. Therefore, he could only continue to stay here for 30 days. Moreover, although he believed the brilliant star unicorn's words, he still had some hope. What if a level 9 magical beast took a liking to him? Reality was always cruel, and the brilliant star unicorn's words weren't wrong at all. In the next 20 days, Long Houchin almost crossed the entire Knight's sacred mountain range and entered the territory of a few level 9 magical beasts along the way. However, these magical beasts didn't even look at him and chased him out. One of them was a very aggressive magical beast, and it had almost seriously injured him. 30 days passed in the blink of an eye, and the token in Long Houchin's hand rippled with a reddish-gold halo. The light spread and turned into a light screen that enveloped him. In the next moment, the light flickered and the scenery in front of him changed. When the scenery became clear again, the first thing Long Houchin saw was his teacher. Yi Hua was waiting anxiously. It had been 30 days. Long Houchin didn't take the initiative to teleport out for a whole 30 days, which meant that he didn't find a suitable mount for himself. But how was that possible? He had the constitution of the Son of Light. Why didn't any magical beast show affection to him? The crippled elder was also there. Seeing that Long Houchin was teleported out alone, he frowned slightly, and there was some doubt in his single eye. He had the cultivation of a great knight before the age of 14. Those magical beasts should be fighting to be his partner. Could it be that his standards were too high? Chapter 13. Other than Yi Hua and the Guardian Elder, Gue Ying and Gue Wu were also there. After Gue Wu was frightened by the Starlight Unicorn and teleported out, he felt uneasy, especially after hearing his father talk about the bet with Yi Hua. His uneasiness became even more intense. He hurriedly told his father about what he saw and heard from Long Houchin. Gue Ying was also shocked. If Long Haochen had obtained a mount like the Starlight Unicorn, his son would definitely not be his opponent. Therefore, the father and son stayed and trained outside the sacred mountain, waiting for Long Haochen to come out and see what kind of mount he had obtained. They waited for more than 20 days. Seeing that the time was almost up, Long Haochen still hadn't appeared. Gue Ying's face was full of smiles these few days, and from time to time, he would tease the anxious Yi Hua with a few words. At this moment, seeing that Long Haochen had really returned empty-handed, Gue Ying couldn't help but feel relieved. He laughed and said to Yi Hua, "Brother Yi Hua, don't forget about our bet. I'll be waiting for you in the Monster Hunter selection competition. Let's go." As he spoke, he deliberately let Gue Wu summon the scarlet-scaled earth dragon, and with a face full of disdain and arrogance, Gue Wu sped away. A trace of anger appeared on Long Haochen's gentle face. He coldly watched Gue Ying and his son leave. He had already engraved this humiliation in his heart. "Didn't you gain anything?" Yihua said somewhat bitterly. He never thought that his disciple would actually follow in his footsteps, and was even inferior to him. Long Haochen lowered his head and said, "I'm sorry. Teacher, I've let you down." The guardian elder said doubtfully, "You're so talented. Why didn't you gain anything? Could it be that those magical beasts are all blind? It's really strange." Long Haochen said with a bitter smile, "I also don't know why it's like this. I crossed the entire sacred mountain and met many magical beasts, but not a single one was willing to get close to me." The elder sighed and said, "You don't have to worry too much about it. Warriors without powerful mounts could also become powerhouses of a generation. Although mounts are very useful to us, Knight, it doesn't mean everything. What is your choice now? You can either hunt for magical beasts on your own in the future, or try your luck with me. However, you have to know that in order to use the teleportation portal to attract a mount, you must first establish a contract during the process. Only magical beasts that have formed a contract with you will be teleported over. Although we knights can change mounts, if we want to violate the equality contract, we have to wait for the death of our mount companion. Your teacher and I can help you with this, but once you do so, it will definitely leave a shadow in your heart, and it will be very detrimental to your future cultivation." Long Haochen said without hesitation, "Senior, I'm willing to try my luck here." The old man nodded and said, "All right then, but don't get your hopes up. The greater the hope, the greater the disappointment." At this point, he seemed to have thought of something from the past, and his single eye revealed a trace of disappointment. A golden token appeared in the old man's hand, and with a wave of his big sleeve, a layer of golden light had already enveloped the three of them. In the air above the light screen, 6 strange symbols appeared one after another, and the surrounding space instantly became distorted. Long Haochen vaguely understood that this was the old man using the power of the teleportation portal, and then using a special method to freely teleport within the Knight's holy mountain. It seemed that the reason why they were able to discover that outsiders had entered was inextricably linked to this teleportation portal. Golden light flashed, and the intense light caused Long Haochen to involuntarily close his eyes. He was surprised to find that during the teleportation process, the funnel vortex in his chest suddenly spun violently, at least 10 times its usual speed. However, this process only lasted for about 10 seconds, and the vortex's spinning speed suddenly decreased, returning to its original state. Long Haochen opened his eyes, and the surrounding scenery had changed. He was actually in a cave, and the walls of the cave were inlaid with light golden gems. The faint golden light illuminated everything here. The light element in the cave was not rich, and it was far less than in the Knight's holy mountain. At most, it was slightly stronger than the outside world. This cave was very large, and looking up, the top was at least 20 feet away from the ground. The entire cave was irregular in shape, and, as far as the eye could see, it was at least more than 100 feet in diameter, just like a huge square. However, this place was empty, and there was no one there. Long Haochen looked down at the ground, and he was surprised to find that there were trapezoidal lattices on the ground, and these lattices were closely connected, forming a huge ring that closed towards the center of this underground square. In every lattice, there was a symbol that he did not recognize at all. At this moment, these symbols were dim and without light. There's no need to look. Not only you can't understand it, even us old guys can't understand it. This is the ancient elven language, the language of an ancient race that has gone extinct. I don't know how the ancestors of the Knight Templars discovered its mysteriousness, but the huge magic circle of our knights' holy mountain was completed with the help of the ancient elven incantation. This is one of the teleportation circles. Through this place, you can instantly connect to other parallel spaces. The operation of the circle consumes a lot of energy, so you only have 15 minutes. If you can't find an aura that is close to you in 15 minutes to complete the contract, then I'm afraid you'll really have to return empty-handed this time. The old man's voice was somewhat regretful. He had never seen a talent like Long Houchin's in his life. It would be a pity if such an outstanding young man could not have a powerful mount. Thank you, senior. Long Houchin bowed respectfully to the old man. The old man nodded and said, "Go to the center of the teleportation circle and sit down. After I activate the circle, you'll feel it." Yes. Long Houchin followed the old man's instructions and walked to the center of the underground plaza with large strides. Here, there was a circle with a diameter of about 10 meters, and in the center was the largest symbol. This symbol looked a bit like the word like, but it had a distorted appearance. He didn't know why, but when Long Houchin saw this huge symbol, the saint's spiritual stove in his chest slightly throbbed. Sitting down cross-legged, Long Houchin got rid of all distracting thoughts. This was his last chance. Yihua's nervousness was not one bit inferior to Long Houchin's. The veins on his clenched fists were exposed, and he didn't even realize that his fingernails had pierced into his palms. The old man slowly raised the golden token in his hand. Yihua could clearly see that in just an instant, the old man's right hand that was holding the token had turned into a transparent and brilliant gold, as if his palm had turned into a gem. Glorious body, the symbol of a rank 7 temple knight. By transforming one's own body into a part of the light element, a powerful temple knight could even transform their entire body into a glorious body. Under this state, they could instantly double the amount of holy and light attribute spiritual power that they released. Although it could only be maintained for a very short period of time, no matter if it was attack or defense, it would double. What kind of concept was this? Very soon, Yihua discovered that it wasn't only the old man's hand that had turned into a glorious body. The few strands of white hair on his head had unexpectedly all turned into a golden color. Immediately after, his head became transparent, and an enormous holy aura that was as vast as the sea blossomed like an explosion. The pressure forced Yihua to retreat rapidly, and only when he reached the outermost stone wall was able to stabilize his body. A complete version of the glorious body? Yihua almost cried out in surprise. This glorious body could be used as long as one was a rank 7 temple knight. However, the higher one's cultivation was, the larger the area that the glorious body could cover on one's body. Only when one's entire body had completely turned into a light crystal could it be called a complete version of the glorious body. This was the symbol of a rank 9 temple knight. In other words, this one-eyed old man in front of him was either an even more powerful rank 8 saint knight, or at least a rank 9 temple knight who was at the peak of rank 9. If such an existence was placed in the outside world, he would at least be a temple master of one of the main palaces of the Knights Templars. The size of the area that the glorious body could cover wouldn't affect its function. At most, it could only double the attack power. However, the higher one's cultivation was, the longer the glorious body could be maintained. The old man shouted in a low voice. The enormous amount of light spiritual power that had been enhanced by the glorious body suddenly poured into the golden token. Immediately, a circle of dense golden light spread out in a flash. Wherever the golden light passed, the ancient elven characters on the trapezoidal lattice on the ground seemed to have been ignited. One after another, they began to shine brightly. Suddenly, an intense and bizarre magic fluctuation began to appear in the entire cave. Yihua leaned against the wall and looked at the magnificent scene in front of him. His eyes didn't even blink. That bizarre feeling seemed to have made him touch the door to breaking through to a spiritual power level of 3,000. In the next moment, when all the ancient elven characters were ignited, thousands of light patterns rippled from these ancient elven characters. The intense golden light caused the entire cave to become incomparably bright. Long Haochen only felt his body shake. It was as if there was an enormous amount of light energy penetrating through his body. At the same time, the saint's spiritual furnace in his chest also began to violently fluctuate. Under the guidance of the saint's spiritual furnace, the dense light elements in the outside world passed through Long Haochen's body. Unexpectedly, a portion of it was quietly retained, causing the funnel-shaped vortex to spiral. Thousands of golden light patterns began to revolve in one direction as they flew upwards. It looked like a huge golden tornado. However, there wasn't even the slightest bit of airflow fluctuation. There was only the enormous amount of light elements that filled people with fear. Another intense hum sounded. The light patterns converged at the top of the cave. A huge, circular golden vortex appeared there. At the same time, from this vortex, a golden light descended from the sky, enveloping Long Haochen, who was sitting upright in the center of the teleportation array. The one-eyed old man's voice sounded in Long Haochen's ears. The selection has begun. The auras of countless magical beasts will appear in your perception. From these auras, look for those that have feelings of closeness to you and use the equality contract. Remember, you must find the aura that is closest to you. Otherwise, the contract will not succeed. Naturally, you will not be able to bring them to our world. Long Haochen could clearly hear everything the one-eyed old man said. However, he didn't reply. This was because he was currently immersed in a strange feeling. The moment the golden light pillar fell, Long Haochen felt as if his soul had left his body and entered a strange world. This was a world with millions upon millions of specks of light. These specks of light converged into a cloud of light that floated around him. At this moment, he seemed to be the center of this world. As long as he gazed at it, there would be countless specks of light pouring out from the cloud of light, allowing him to inspect them. However, the number of specks of light was really too many. They were colorful, and each speck of light had a different aura. A quarter of an hour. He firmly remembered that he only had a quarter of an hour. This was his only chance to choose, not daring to think too much or waste any time. Long Haochen chose a cloud of light at random and quickly filtered the auras coming from the specks of light. He didn't know that each cloud of light was a parallel space, and those specks of light were the auras emitted by the magical beasts in the parallel space. The ancient array he was in was a powerful existence that communicated with parallel spaces. It was also the core of all the teleportation arrays on the Knight's Holy Mountain. Coldness, fear, resistance, anger. He felt all kinds of emotions, and each of them seemed to have a certain impact on his mental strength. However, the impact was not strong. With his powerful mental strength, his perception speed was extremely fast. Almost every instant, he would filter out the auras coming from dozens of specks of light. The benefits of having an abnormal innate mental strength were undoubtedly evident at this moment. If it were someone else, they probably wouldn't even be able to get a tenth of what he had chosen. As time passed, Long Haochen's mood became more and more anxious. There were too few auras that made him feel warmth. Most of the specks of light transmitted fear to him. It was as if they were afraid of him. A quarter of an hour was almost up, and Long Haochen clearly felt that everything in front of him was gradually beginning to become illusory. No, I must find my partner. Long Haochen roared unwillingly in his heart. His perception suddenly became a little clearer. Inside the cave, the old man had been observing Long Haochen. The reason why he only had a quarter of an hour to choose was that this was the limit of Long Haochen's own spiritual power. The reason why only the Grand Knight could come here to withstand the power of the array was that only spiritual power of this level could withstand the consumption. Moreover, it had to be a young man under the age of 20. Once the age exceeded the limit, the array would instantly backfire. At this moment, a quarter of an hour had passed, but the golden light emitted from Long Houchen's body did not completely disappear. His face looked a little pale, but he still gritted his teeth and endured. What a strong willpower! The old man was secretly amazed. He was very clear that although people who were in the array could not feel the consumption of their own spiritual power, as long as their body could not bear it, they would naturally leave the array. Only a strong willpower could stimulate their own potential and stay for a little longer. Found it. Just when Long Houchen's vision became illusory and his will became a little fuzzy, he subconsciously shifted his line of sight and fell on another light cloud. A strong sense of intimacy and joy instantly spread into the depths of his soul. Without any hesitation, Long Houchen instantly activated the mark of the equality contract. This mark was given to him by Yihua a long time ago. It was completely communicated and imprinted with spiritual power. As long as the other party agreed, it would succeed. If the other party did not agree, there would be no backfire. This was the most peaceful kind of magic contract. Time was tight, and he did not even have the time to be excited. The light flashed, and the communication was completed in an instant. The aura that was full of intimacy and joy seemed to be more anxious than him. The contract between the two parties was completed in the next moment. The specks of light gradually disappeared, and the large light cloud also faded. Everything once again became golden. In the blazing golden light, Long Houchen only felt that there was something extra in front of him, and this extra aura was full of intimacy to him. He succeeded. The one-eyed old man exclaimed in surprise. The body of glorious light gradually returned to normal, and the golden light patterns that filled the sky also disappeared. The old man's forehead was already sweating. It was obvious that supporting this huge transmission array was an enormous burden on him. Hearing that it was a success, Yihua rushed over at the first moment and arrived at the old man's side, looking towards the center. As the golden light faded, Long Houchen's figure gradually appeared in front of them. Apart from his somewhat pale complexion, there were no other changes. When his soul returned, the first thing Long Houchen felt was emptiness from the inside out. The spiritual power within his body was almost exhausted. The funnel vortex that was originally slowly rotating was almost stagnant. Even the light of the saint's spiritual stove had dimmed a lot. Fortunately, as a knight, he still had the existence of external spiritual power. Although he felt empty inside his body, it did not affect his normal movements. Subconsciously, Long Houchen cast his gaze towards the aura in front of him. He had spent so much effort to arrive at the knight's sacred mountain for a month. Wasn't it all for this? However, when Long Houchen saw his companion that had signed an equal contract with him, he was immediately dumbfounded. Not far away, Yihua and the one-eyed old man were also dumbfounded. Their sluggishness was not because the magical beast companion that Long Houchen had summoned was too powerful, but because it was a lizard that was about a meter long. Its body was covered with a thin layer of black scales. The shape of the scales was somewhat strange. The top was somewhat trapezoidal, but the two sides converged downwards in an arc, finally converging together. It was somewhat similar to the tower shield in the heavy knight's hand. Its head was no different from an ordinary lizard. A pair of small red eyes blinked as they looked at Long Houchen. It was indescribably intimate. Its tongue flicked in and out like a snake's tongue, and it seemed to be sensing Long Houchen's aura under his feet. If that was the case, Long Houchen would not have been so stunned. At most, he had summoned a level 2 ground fire lizard. However, this lizard's body was crisscrossed with at least a dozen wounds that flowed with dark red blood. Moreover, there was a large bulge on its neck that was almost as thick as its neck, coupled with the scars all over its body. Describing it as ugly could be considered compliment. Long Houchen had never expected that after so much effort, what he had finally summoned was a seemingly crippled or even malevolently mutated level 2 ground fire lizard. Ever since he started cultivating, everything had been smooth sailing. This was the first time he had suffered a setback. Whoa! The ground fire lizard seemed to enjoy the aura on Long Houchen's body. It rubbed against him, and its pair of small red eyes were filled with intimacy. A bitter smile appeared on Long Houchen's face. Through the equality contract, he could sense the strength of this ground fire lizard, which was around level 2 mid-tier. Starlight Unicorn King, are you lying to me? You said that even you are not qualified to form a contract with my body of light. However, what is this before me? A level 2 ground fire lizard. Yi Hua silently walked to Long Houchen's side and pulled him up from the ground. He said calmly, "The setback you have suffered is nothing compared to what I experienced back then. If you can't find a mount partner that you like in the Holy Mountain, you will have to rely on hunting in the future. If you can reach the level of the Knight of the Seal, it will not be impossible for you to tame a giant dragon." With a clang, Yi Hua unsheathed the heavy sword on his back, and a sharp, murderous aura arose. That ground fire lizard seemed to feel a threat to its life. Although it was covered in wounds, its body flashed and hid behind Long Houchen. It only revealed its bulging head and looked at Yi Hua with fear. "Teacher, what are you doing?" With a clang, Long Houchen only had time to draw his heavy sword and use the hilt to block Yi Hua's downward slash. Yi Hua was stunned. "Silly boy, are you going to take this little cripple away? You have to know that if you don't kill it, you will never be able to form an equality contract with a magical beast in the future." Long Houchen's eyes were filled with unwillingness, helplessness, and even a hint of anger. However, there was not a hint of killing intent. "Teacher, do you still remember the story of you and your mountain-shaking eagle companion? It chose you when you were in the most difficult situation. You treated it as a family member. Didn't I summon this little fellow at the very last moment? Although it is not strong and even has a disability, it is still my companion that has formed a contract with me. We are partners, so I have to protect its safety. Even if I don't have a real mount in this life, I can't abandon it just because I dislike it. It is not because I am afraid of leaving a shadow. From the moment we formed the contract, it was already my family." As he spoke, Long Houchen slowly squatted down and gently touched the head of the ground fire lizard. Its scales felt smooth and silky to the touch. They weren't hard at all. The ground fire lizard did not move. It was as if it had turned into a statue, staring blankly at Long Houchen with its small red eyes. "Don't worry, little fellow. I will not abandon you. I will not ask you to fight for me. I only hope that you can be my friend, okay?" The eyes of the ground fire lizard returned to its original size. It stuck out its tongue and licked Long Houchen's hand. Yi Hua sheathed his heavy sword and sighed. "Child, you are just too soft-hearted and sentimental." Long Houchen glanced at his teacher apologetically and said, "Teacher, don't worry. I'll definitely work hard in my cultivation. Even without the help of my mount companion, I definitely won't lose to the Ghost Warrior. Teacher, my internal spiritual power is almost exhausted. Can you help heal my companion's injuries?" What else could Yi Hua say? He could only silently nod and said, "Okay." Just as his hand was shining with a golden light and he was about to release a recovery skill, the one-eyed elder who had been silent for a long time suddenly shouted, "Wait." "Hmm?" Long Houchen and Yi Hua looked at him at the same time. The one-eyed elder said in a deep voice, "If you don't want it to die, don't heal it." Long Houchen stood up and asked in confusion, "Senior, why is that?" The elder's single eye looked at him seriously and smiled. "You are good, really good. In you, I see the compassion and benevolence of a knight. Unfortunately, although you are kind and don't mind this little guy, I'm afraid you still can't take it away, because it has a dark constitution. Once you use light attribute skills to heal it, it will only cause harm." "Dark constitution?" Long Houchen said in surprise. The elder nodded and said, "Among the magical beasts summoned through the teleportation circle, some of them come from a level similar to the abyss. No matter what their attributes are, they are born with a dark constitution. All magical beasts with a dark constitution, as long as they leave this cave, will immediately be killed by the light array here. In this place, it cannot be sent back to its original place through a contract. No magic array will work here. Although I am very curious as to why a magical beast with a dark constitution would get close to you and even form a contract with you, I have to say that coming here is almost equivalent to seeking its own death. What? Long Houchin was shocked, and the ground fire lizard also seemed to understand his words. It stuck close to Long Houchin and trembled, its pair of red eyes filled with fear. The elder said calmly, "Give it up. This is not what you want, and it will not affect your future cultivation. Even if you hunt magical beasts, it will be much stronger than this mutated ground fire lizard." Long Houchin lowered his head and looked into the eyes of the ground fire lizard. He had a contract with it, so he could feel the ground fire lizard's current emotions. This little guy seemed to understand their conversation, and its emotions were filled with fear, loneliness, pain, and unwillingness. Long Houchin naturally wanted a powerful mount companion, but as he felt the changes in the ground fire lizard's emotions, he was reminded of the time when his parents left Mount Odin at the same time. At that time, didn't he feel the same way? It is my companion. How can I just abandon it like this? Senior, is there really no other way? I can't just abandon it. Long Houchin bent down and carried the ground fire lizard, ignoring the filth and dark red blood flowing on its body. The ground fire lizard in Long Houchin's arms was clearly much calmer, and it pressed its head tightly against his chest, not moving an inch. Like a child that had found its kin, its two not-so-thick front claws clung to Long Houchin's shoulders, and its claws clung tightly to his clothes. The elder hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "You are a kind-hearted child. It's not that there is no way, but it will cause great harm to your body." Long Houchin carried the ground fire lizard that weighed only about 25 kilograms and felt its heartbeat. He pursed his lips and said, "Please guide me, Senior." The elder said in a deep voice, "If you want it to leave this place alive, there is only one way, and that is to change its physique. Only by changing the darkness into light can it leave safely." Yihua said in shock, "Senior, that doesn't seem possible. How can the darkness physique be changed into light?" The elder said, "Of course not for us, but it is possible for him. With the existence of the equal contract, this ground fire lizard is much more receptive to the energy he transmits. However, this child needs to infuse his blood that is filled with light attribute into the ground fire lizard's body and completely wash away its darkness physique." Yihua sucked in a breath of cold air, and a puzzled look appeared on his ice-cold face. "How much blood is needed to achieve this?" The elder shook his head and said, "I don't know either. It depends on how much the ground fire lizard can accept his blood, and also the intensity of the light energy in his blood. But regardless of whether it succeeds or not, the child's essence will be greatly damaged. In my opinion, it is really not worth it for such a second-grade magical beast." Long Houchin. Yihua turned to Long Houchin, and just as he was about to say something, he was interrupted for the first time. "Teacher, you don't have to say anything. I have already made up my mind. The contract has been established, and this is my fate with it. If I abandon it just because it is weak and even endanger its life, then how can I be worthy of being a guardian knight?" Long Houchin said resolutely as he hugged the ground fire lizard tightly in his arms. He bowed slightly to the elder and said, "Senior, please advise me on what to do." The elder sighed and said, "Child, your temperament is really rare. Although you did not obtain a powerful mount companion this time, your future is still limitless. The method is very simple. Activate the equal contract between the two of you, and then drip your blood into the contract rune on its body." "Thank you, Senior," Long Houchin replied, and slowly squatted down, placing the ground fire lizard on the ground. The ground fire lizard raised its head and looked at Long Houchin, and it kept making woo-woo sounds. "Don't be afraid. I will do my best to save you. You are already my companion. If I can't even protect you, then what kind of guardian knight am I?" Long Houchin sat cross-legged in front of the ground fire lizard. With a thought, he activated the equal contract between the two of them. The equal contract was also known as the equal summoning contract. It was mainly dominated by humans. Activating the contract was equivalent to summoning a magical beast. A purple light lit up on Long Houchin's forehead. The purple light gradually expanded and turned into a purple light spot the size of a fingernail, faintly discernible on his forehead. "Eh," the one-eyed elder said to Yihua in surprise. "That's strange. Their contract rune seems to be very complicated. The stronger the contract between a human and a magical beast, the more complicated the contract rune would be." Yihua said doubtfully, "No, isn't it just a simple spot of light?" The elder shook his head and said, "No, it's not that simple. The rune is covered by that purple light. Although I can't see what it is, it's definitely not that simple. Look at that ground fire lizard." As Long Haochin activated the contract rune appeared on his forehead, and it also appeared on the body of the ground fire lizard. Generally speaking, no matter if it was a human or magical beast, the contract rune would appear on the head. However, this ground fire lizard was different. A purple light pattern with a diameter of more than a foot slowly appeared on its back, almost covering its entire back. The dense purple light was like a layer of fog covering it. Although it was many times larger than the rune on Long Haochin's head, it was still difficult to see what it looked like under the purple fog. Long Haochin said gently to the ground fire lizard, "Little guy, don't be afraid. I will use the light attribute in my blood to change your physique. I don't know if it will be very painful, but you must endure it, okay?" The ground fire lizard actually nodded at him in a very intelligent manner after hearing his words. Its pair of red eyes were filled with gratitude and kindness. Long Haochin raised both of his hands and flicked his left index finger. Instantly, a faint golden light lit up on his fingertip. The golden light was about 2 inches long. Releasing spiritual energy was the symbol of a grade 4 Great Knight. Although a grade 3 Knight could also release spiritual energy through a skill like Light Severing Sword, it was obviously not on the same level as a grade 4 Great Knight who could release spiritual energy without using a skill. With a flash of golden light, Long Haochin cut his right wrist. Instantly, fresh blood gushed out and almost instantly turned into a stream of blood that flowed down into the huge rune on the back of the ground fire lizard. Whoa! Accompanied by a miserable cry, the ground fire lizard suddenly raised its head, its body trembling violently. Its 4 claws gripped the ancient elven runes on the ground, forcefully stabilizing its body and preventing it from moving. The old man's single eye revealed a look of surprise again. This ground fire lizard is really intelligent. It seems like it isn't as simple as it looks. Yihua smiled bitterly. Let's hope so. He really wanted to stop Long Haochin from doing this. A grade 2 ground fire lizard really wasn't worth it. Moreover, the Monster Hunter's trials were in half a year's time. Long Haochin's vitality was greatly damaged at this time, and he didn't know if he could recover in half a year. However, could he really stop this disciple of his? He couldn't. In his opinion, Long Haochin's spirit of not giving up was even more precious than being the first Monster Hunter's trials. Long Haochin's blood dripped onto the rune on the back of the ground fire lizard and instantly dissolved. Rings of faint golden light spread out from the purple rune and covered the entire body of the ground fire lizard. Every time the golden light flowed past, the ground fire lizard's body would tremble violently, as if it was electrocuted, but it still didn't move. At the same time, as the layers of golden light flowed, the dense dark aura and ferocious aura gradually dissipated from the ground fire lizard's body. Chapter 14. Long Haochin stared at the changes in the ground fire lizard with a determined gaze. His right hand was already clenched into a fist. Even though blood was still flowing, his hand was very stable. Layers of golden light constantly washed over the ground fire lizard's body. The wounds on its body kept emitting white smoke, and there were obvious signs of festering. Clearly, the ground fire lizard with a dark physique was suffering from the impact of the light energy. If it wasn't for the equality contract that Long Haochin had formed with it, the immense light energy contained in Long Haochin's Son of Light physique would have destroyed it. The muscles on the sides of the ground fire lizard's cheeks bulged, and traces of blood seeped out from the side of its mouth. Even though its body was trembling violently, its 4 claws were still firmly planted on the ground, not allowing itself to move. It raised its head high and looked at Long Haochin. The man and beast looked at each other. Apart from determination, there was also a trace of warmth in their gazes. Yes, They had captured the warmth of kinship in each other's eyes. Blood continued to flow, and Long Houchen's face became paler and paler. Weakness was starting to appear. Even though he already possessed a spiritual energy of up to 1,000 points, he was still a human after all. A loss of more than 1/3 of a human's blood would be fatal. And with his current rate of blood loss, it wouldn't be long before he reached this limit. Time ticked by. Be it Yi Hua or the one-eyed old man, both of them were extremely nervous. The one-eyed old man had been guarding the sacred mountain for many years, but this was the first time he had encountered such a situation. There were a few possible outcomes. The first was that the ground fire lizard couldn't withstand the baptism of the light blood and died. The second was that it completed the baptism of the light blood and became a magical beast with a light physique. In that case, Long Houchen's goal would be achieved. The third was that the ground fire lizard couldn't withstand the pain and ran away on its own. Then, everything would be in vain. The fourth was what the one-eyed old man and Yi Hua didn't want to see. That was if Long Houchen lost too much blood and couldn't hold on. In that case, not only would the ground fire lizard not be able to complete its evolution, but Long Houchen's life would also be in danger due to the loss of blood. Long Houchen's originally stable right hand gradually began to tremble. His originally fair skin had now appeared as sickly pale, and the original luster had long since disappeared. The blood flowing from his wrist had already started to slow down. Apart from the wound healing, it was also a sign that he was losing a large amount of blood. But strangely, the ground fire lizard was no longer trembling. The originally pitch-black scales on his body gradually gained a faint layer of golden light, and the rotting wounds on his body also healed at an astonishing speed. Clearly, its body was and its body was long. Long of the long fire lizard. The most peculiar change was the contract rune between Long Houchen and the ground fire lizard. Ground, of the purple light, the light haze, and the faint, the rune. And in the run, Ling of the rune ding, light Ling's demon, and light, the long of, the of the field. Long Houchen's body swayed, and he almost fell. Not good. Houchen can't hold on any longer. Yi Hua's heartstrings were already stretched taut, and he couldn't help but want to rush forward. Wait a little longer. The one-eyed old man raised his hand and stopped him from rushing forward. Long Houchen raised his left hand and pressed it on the ground fire lizard's neck to support his body. At this moment, he could no longer see anything clearly. The intense dizziness brought about by the loss of blood made him feel like he could fall at any moment. Never abandon, never give up. Long Houchen clenched his teeth and silently repeated these words in his heart. Even though he had only interacted with the ground fire lizard for a short period of time, this was the first time he felt the effects of the equality contract. That closeness like a family member, as well as the ground fire lizard's fear towards him, all touched his heart deeply. Long Houchen didn't have any siblings. For the past few years, Lin Xian had always treated him like an older sister. When he made the final decision just now, it was because he was wondering what Lin Xian would do if he was in such a predicament. Partners. What is a partner? A true partner who goes through thick and thin together. Looking at the ground fire lizard's eyes with blurred vision, Long Houchen no longer felt that it was ugly. At this moment, Long Houchen had lost more than 1/3 of his blood. If he wasn't a Grand Knight, his life would be in danger. Even though the one-eyed old man stopped Yi Hua, he was also prepared to act at any moment. Once Long Houchen's life force showed signs of weakening, he would definitely act at once. To stop him from continuing, roar! An excited roar rang out, and a layer of golden light emerged from the ground fire lizard's body. All of the dark aura and ferocious aura had already disappeared. A ray of golden light shot out from the one-eyed old man's hand and landed on the wound on Long Houchen's wrist, instantly healing it. Long Houchen's body went limp, and he fell to the ground. However, he didn't faint because he wanted to see if he had really succeeded. A wet tongue gently licked his face, and that pair of red eyes were filled with vigor, as though they were embedded with 2 rubies. The purplish gold contract rune on the back of the ground fire lizard disappeared, and the wound on the ground fire lizard's body had completely disappeared. The shield-shaped scales emitted a layer of faint golden luster. Yihua sighed inwardly and walked forward slowly. He wanted to feed Long Haochen some pills that could strengthen his corporeity. He knew that even though Long Haochen had succeeded, he had paid a huge price. With such a loss of blood essence, it would probably take a year and a half to recover. Roar! The ground fire lizard suddenly let out a low roar at Yihua, and its pair of red eyes were filled with hostility. A huge fireball was spat out of his mouth, heading straight for Yihua. Yihua was taken aback. A spiritual barrier rose up, and with a boom, it blocked the fireball. "Don't get close to it. It seems to be doing something," the one-eyed old man shouted. The ground fire lizard's fireball stopped Yihua in his tracks, and its gaze landed on the weakened Long Haochen's face again. At this moment, a ray of purple light suddenly emerged from its back, heading straight for the top of the cave. This ray of purple light was released in a straight line, as though its back had suddenly split open. After the light pattern appeared, the ground fire lizard raised its head again, but at this moment, its pair of red eyes rippled with a faint hint of purple. This hint of purple was cold and noble. The purple light pattern first extended backwards, all the way to its tail, and then surged upwards, reaching its neck in an instant. At this point, the purple light pattern no longer extended upwards in a straight line, but split into two. One extended to the top of its head, and the other extended to the protrusion on its neck. A strange wave of spiritual power quietly rippled, and the ground fire lizard's eyes suddenly revealed a trace of pain, but more than that, it was excitement. Its body began to tremble violently. Unstable spiritual power ripples constantly surged out from the sudden appearance of the purple light pattern, and this spiritual power ripple had clearly surpassed the level of a second-tier, mid-tier magical beast. Evolution? This ground fire lizard is about to evolve, the one-eyed old man exclaimed. It wasn't rare for magical beasts to evolve, but generally speaking, only magical beasts of 5th tier and above had the possibility of evolving. This ground fire lizard was only a 2nd-tier magical beast. It actually evolved after absorbing Long Haochen's blood. With a poof, a thick purple current suddenly erupted from the ground fire lizard's body, and immediately after, its originally 1-meter-long body began to grow at a speed visible to the naked eye. It wasn't just the size of its body that was changing. The scales on its body were also changing in a strange way. The originally smooth scales gradually had some protrusions, and a thick texture appeared. The most peculiar thing was the protrusion on its neck. That protrusion actually extended along with the expansion of its body. With a poof, the ground fire lizard's body suddenly stiffened, and immediately after, from the protrusion on its neck, a brand new head popped out and stood side by side with the original head. At this moment, its body had also extended from 1 meter to 2 meters. The purple light suddenly retracted, and everything seemed to have stopped. The purple light pattern extended all the way to the top of the second head, and on both heads there were some protrusions, which made them look even more ferocious. From the looks of it, the second head that appeared along with the evolution was no different from the first head. The only difference was the color of its eyes. The second head's eyes were golden. After the evolution, the limbs of the ground fire lizard were obviously much thicker, and the armor on its back was also thicker. Especially the change to its 2 heads, it showed that the protrusion on its neck was not some kind of disability. After completing the evolution, there was another protrusion at the base of the neck of the second head, but it wasn't as big as the original protrusion, and it was now the size of a fist. Middle tier, 4th tier. Yihua and the one-eyed old man looked at each other, their eyes filled with shock. Every level of magical beast was divided into beginner, intermediate, advanced, and pinnacle. From 2nd tier intermediate to 4th tier, this was an evolution that spanned 8 stages. Not to mention seeing it, they had never even heard of it. Usually, when magical beasts evolve, there would at most be some slight changes to their bodies, and their strength would increase slightly. It was normal for them to advance from intermediate to advanced, and they had never heard of any evolution that spanned levels. But the ground fire lizard in front of them had completed its evolution. No, it could no longer be called a ground fire lizard. The attributes of its second head were different from the first head, and it clearly exuded the aura of light. A two-headed, dual-attribute, lizard-type magical beast. What kind of species was this? Especially with such a leap in evolution, it was sufficient to show that this ground fire lizard wasn't some useless magical beast. Furthermore, Yihua had also noticed the new protrusion on its neck. Could it be that this ground fire lizard could grow a third head in the future and evolve again? Yihua swallowed a mouthful of saliva and asked the one-eyed old man beside him, "Senior, do you recognize this magical beast?" The old man shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "I don't know. No one can recognize all magical beasts, especially one that was summoned from another parallel space. It looks like this little fellow has picked up a treasure. As long as this lizard could evolve one more time, he would already have an excellent mount." Now, what is it doing? Just as they were talking, the two-headed lizard that had completed its evolution slowly lowered its two heads and looked at Long Houchen, who was also shocked by its evolution. Its long tail swung from the back to the front, and the second head bit the tip of the tail. Immediately, light purple blood flowed out. Along with the evolution, the color of its blood actually changed. The contract rune appeared once again. The rune on the back of the two-headed lizard didn't grow bigger because of its evolution. Furthermore, this time, it was obvious that it was the one who initiated the rune. Its long tail flicked lightly, and the tip of the tail that was flowing with light purple blood directly pierced the contract rune on Long Houchen's forehead. Long Houchen's body stiffened, and he only felt a scorching warm current entering his forehead. That scorching feeling instantly spread throughout his entire body. Reverse feeding. It's using its own blood to reverse feed Long Houchen. Yihua jumped up in shock. The higher the level of a magical beast, the more intelligent it was. Only magical beasts above level 6 could gradually develop intelligence that was not lower than that of humans. The two-headed lizard in front of them was so intelligent that it actually learned from Long Houchen and used its own blood to make up for the loss of Long Houchen's blood essence. The two-headed lizard's two heads, two red and two gold eyes, gazed at Long Houchen tenderly. The two-headed lizard's body swayed slightly. A layer of net-like light purple pattern began to spread from Long Houchen's forehead to his entire body. He felt as if his entire body was in a furnace, and he couldn't tell if it was painful or comfortable. He could only vaguely feel that his blood vessels were undergoing earth-shattering changes due to this scorching heat. The original feeling of weakness also gradually disappeared in this scorching heat. A layer of faint blood-red light quietly spread out from the two-headed lizard's body, forming a red halo. Then, the halo slowly converged into a single point and finally fell into the contract rune on its back. Long Houchen and the two-headed lizard trembled at the same time. There seemed to be an additional layer of connection between the two of them. This is a blood contract that is even more extreme than a master-servant contract. The one-eyed old man cried out involuntarily. A blood contract where the master dies and the servant dies. This two-headed lizard is repaying a debt of gratitude. Yihua also knew about the blood contract. This kind of contract was extremely extreme. It wouldn't cause any harm to Long Houchen, but it would be a fatal restriction to the two-headed lizard. If Long Houchen died, then the two-headed lizard would definitely die as well. But if it died, it wouldn't affect Long Houchen in the slightest. According to the legends, the blood contract had many other special functions. It could even lend its own abilities to its master. However, there were simply no magical beasts that were willing to sign such a contract. Therefore, very few people knew exactly how profound the blood contract was. The one-eyed old man took a deep breath and said slowly, "No matter whether this two-headed lizard can evolve again in the future, the relationship between it and your disciple is far more intimate than that of the other night. Perhaps this can be considered as a blessing in disguise." The light gradually faded away, and the light purple pattern on Long Houchen's body quietly disappeared into his skin. The two-headed lizard retracted its tail, and walked to his side. It used its two big heads to gently stroke his leg. "What kind of partner do I have now? My name is Houchin. You can follow my name and be called Haoyue."